Chapter 1620. Along the way, Ghost chattered on and on, asking Lu Yi about his mood from time to time. Lu Yi was annoyed by her questions and said that he was in a bad mood. Ghost felt helpless and regretful. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have thought about revenge. Now that she had offended this guy, she didn't know if she would have the chance to go to the merfolk's territory again. But on second thought, she thought of something and glanced at Lu Yi smugly. Since that's the case, let's part ways here. We won't see each other again. As he said this, he actually left in a straightforward manner. Lu Yi turned to look in the direction she left, secretly surprised. He thought that Ghost was deliberately mystifying things, but she really left just like that. Ignoring her for now, Lu Yi continued to rush in the direction of the Qieling realm. A few days later, he finally arrived at the outskirts of the Qieling realm. He had been here once before when he first met Chu Shen. Chu Shen, who had run away from home, was captured by him and sent here. He even received a reward of 100,000 spirit jades. But he didn't enter the Qieling realm that time, because Yu Yao had personally come out to take Chu Shen. So he didn't know what the situation was like inside the Qieling realm. Judging from the outside, the Qieling realm wasn't very big, much smaller than the 9 states. But the strength of a realm's foundation had nothing to do with its size. The Qieling realm was able to produce sunshine like Jiao Yan. Even with the convenience of the Wanxiang galaxy, it was still a well-known large-scale realm. However, it shouldn't be a top-level realm. As far as Lu Yi knew, the Wanxiang galaxy didn't have any top-level realms. The reason why there were so many sunshine here was because of the galaxy's uniqueness. The resources cultivators from other galaxies could only be self-sufficient in their own galaxy. Even if they interacted with other galaxies, it was difficult for them to have frequent large-scale transactions. But the Wanxiang galaxy was different. It could be said that it was the most prosperous galaxy in the universe. With top-level spiritual islands like the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce and the Wanxiang Island, the cultivators of this galaxy didn't have to worry about the resources they needed for cultivation. The Qieling realm also wasn't like the other large-scale realms that Lu Yi knew. There were no signs of cultivators guarding the periphery. This made it so that Lu Yi didn't know what to do when he came here. He could enter directly, but entering without an invitation wasn't appropriate. Therefore, he could only send a message to Chu Shen first. This time he managed to contact Chu Shen. Chu Shen replied quickly, "Big brother, you're back? Wait a moment, I'll come out to pick you up." Lu Yi waited quietly outside. Not long after, an aura rapidly approached them from within the realm. Lu Yi revealed a puzzled expression because he could sense that this aura did not belong to Chu Shen. This person seemed to be Yu Yao. Furthermore, from the fluctuations of her power, she was no ordinary Yu Yao. Sure enough, after a short moment, a graceful figure appeared in his field of vision. It was a young woman in a snow-white palace dress. Her beautiful hair was coiled into a bun and casually strung up with a jade hairpin to reveal her slender and white neck. Lu Yi realized that he had seen this woman before. She was Yu Yao, the woman who had taken Chu Shen from him previously. She was the one who had given him 100,000 spirit jades. Lu Yi remembered that Chu Shen called her Aunt Yu, but she didn't know how to address her. Li Taibai greets fellow Taoist. Lu Yi bowed and stated the purpose of his visit. "I'm here to look for junior brother Chu Shen Chu." He was somewhat puzzled. Chu Shen had clearly said that he would come out to pick him up. Why was Aunt Yu the one who had come instead? Aunt Yu's eyes were as clear as water as she sized Lu Yi up. She naturally recognized Lu Yi at a glance, but she couldn't see anything special about him. This was because according to the limited information she had obtained, this Li Taibai should be the Fa Wuzuan who had made a name for himself in the Constellation Hall before disappearing without a trace. The twin chi-connected formation disk that was frequently used on the 10,000 creation sea was created by this person. Logically speaking, such a person should have an extraordinary background. However, up until now, the Qieling realm had not been able to find out anything about him. He seemed to have no connections with any of the known top forces. Moreover, if he really did come from a top force, he definitely wouldn't sell the twin chi-connected formation disk. Such a thing would only be treasured by the force he belonged to. After looking at him for a while, Aunt Yu asked meaningfully, "Are you really called Li Taibai?" Lu Yi was slightly surprised. He thought to himself, "I haven't even made a name for myself on the 10,000 creation sea yet. How did the Qieling realm know about me?" However, he didn't know that Aunt Yu only knew about his other identity. Fortunately, Aunt Yu didn't intend to probe further. She said casually and turned around, "Come with me." Lu Yi wanted to ask Chu Shen, but on second thought, it was probably Chu Shen who asked Aunt Yu to pick him up, so he decisively followed her. Although the Qieling realm was not big, it was a place full of spiritual energy. Moreover, this realm had been promoted to a large realm for many years. Although it had not been promoted to a top realm, it was not far away. It was many times stronger than the current 9 regions. The entire realm was filled with extremely pure and rich spiritual energy. Cultivators who cultivated in such an environment would save many years of hard work. In the center of the entire Chailing realm, there was a huge basin terrain. Looking down from the sky, it was as if there was a pit in the ground. The pit was like spring all year round, and colorful flowers were competing to be beautiful. This hidden flower valley was the center of the Chailing realm. The flowers and plants in the valley were not ordinary things. They were all extremely precious medicinal materials. Aunt Yu led Lu Yi and didn't say a word along the way. Lu Yi was not familiar with others, so he didn't speak much, so he just looked around casually. The number of cultivators in the entire Chailing realm didn't seem to be many, because Lu Yi didn't see many cultivators. However, any cultivator he met was extremely strong. Following Aunt Yu to the hidden flower valley, Lu Ye's gaze was quickly attracted by a position. Over there, in a colorful field, a small figure stood there with open arms, facing the sun, closed eyes, and took a deep breath with an intoxicated expression. It should be a girl who looked only in her early teens. Her hair was braided and her skin was wheat-colored. She looked very healthy and lively. In a peaceful environment, the intoxicated figure with closed eyes and the colorful flowers set off, this scene was like a painting. Looking at her again, Lu Yi showed a puzzled look, because the face of this little girl gave him a subtle sense of familiarity, as if he had seen her somewhere before. Lu Yi was puzzled. If he had seen a little girl of this age before, he should have an impression of her, but he couldn't think of where he had seen her. Before he could look any further, Aunt Yu led him in a certain direction. In front of him was a simple hall. Aunt Yu said, "Go in." Lu Yi nodded, "Thank you." As he spoke, he strode into the hall and swept the surroundings with his gaze. To his astonishment, he noticed that the hall was completely empty, and there wasn't even the slightest shadow of a person. He thought Chu Shen would be waiting for him here. However, since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. He stepped into the hall, found a chair and sat down. He took out a sound talisman and sent a message to Chu Shen. Strangely, although the message was sent out, Chu Shen didn't respond. Just as he was about to try to contact Tang Jun, the door to the hall suddenly closed with a bang. Lu Yi was startled and shot to his feet, looking around vigilantly. Using his divine sense, he didn't detect anything unusual, but the door to the hall had suddenly closed. Obviously something was wrong. He faintly felt that something was wrong, but on second thought, if the Chailing boundary really wanted to harm him, there was no reason for them to go through so much trouble. Aunt Yu alone was not someone he could contend with. Moreover, it was strange that Chu Shen didn't respond when he contacted him. When he was outside the Chailing boundary, Chu Shen had clearly said that he would come to pick him up. But in the end, Chu Shen didn't show up, and the one who came to pick him up was Yu Yao. He couldn't say that Chu Shen wanted to harm him and had someone lure him in, could he? Just as he was feeling suspicious, a trace of darkness suddenly flowed out of the hall. The darkness was like flowing water, flowing in from all directions. Lu Yi didn't know what this darkness was, but he knew that he couldn't let it touch him. His body flashed as he rushed towards the door. When he got close, he unsheathed his long saber and chopped down. However, a curtain of light suddenly lit up in front of him, easily blocking his saber. This hall was covered in a spirit array, and the strength of this spirit array was not something he could break. What was going on? Lu Yi had no idea what was going on. The darkness was thick and quickly eroded. The hall was only so big. Lu Yi hid here and there, but in the end there was no place to hide. He could only calm his mind and prepare to be enveloped by the darkness. In the next instant, the darkness swallowed his figure. Lu Yi only felt his body suddenly sink as if there was a mountain on his back, pressing down on him until his waist was a little bent. He hurriedly urged the power of the talent tree, but the talent tree didn't respond. Only then did he understand that although the darkness had a strange power, it didn't invade his body, so the talent tree didn't react. It was very uncomfortable and his bones creaked. But this huge pressure was still within the range that Lu Yi could endure, and it wasn't enough to crush him. Struggling to hold on, he took out the sound talisman again and tried to contact Chu Shen or Tang Jun, but he found that he couldn't even send a message. He really couldn't understand why. The only thing he was sure of was that someone was secretly attacking him. And to be able to do this, it was either Rizhao or Yu Yao like Aunt Yu. It was most likely Aunt Yu. Lu Yi thought to himself. Outside the grand hall, Aunt Yu, who had brought Lu Yi here, was quietly watching. Although she couldn't see what was happening inside, she could still tell what was happening inside. She was a bit curious. Just what had this Li Taibai done to make the World Master personally punish him? Chapter 1621. Outside the main hall, Aunt Yu waited for a while before preparing to leave. She was only responsible for bringing Lu Yi here, and there was nothing else for her to do. As for why the Realm Master wanted to punish the people in the hall personally, she guessed that it had something to do with Chu Xin. Due to the incident at Wushuang Island, Chu Xin had a huge conflict with her. The Realm Master had nowhere to vent her anger, so she could only trouble Li Taibai. A small figure suddenly ran over from afar. It was the little girl who was standing among the flowers. She came in front of Aunt Yu and said crisply, "Master." Aunt Yu nodded. "Come with me. I haven't tested your cultivation in a while. Let's see if you've been slacking off recently." The little girl said seriously, "No, I haven't. I've strictly completed what Master asked me to do." Aunt Yu smiled and didn't say anything else. She used her mana to wrap the little girl up and flew up into the sky. On the other side, in a bedroom, Chu Xin scratched his ears and cheeks, looking absent-minded. There was a person sitting in front of him, graceful and elegant. It was the Realm Master of this realm, and also the only sunshine in the Qieling realm, Jiuyan. Jiuyan was also testing Chu Xin's cultivation. As she asked and answered questions, time passed slowly. After a while, Chu Xin couldn't take it anymore. "Mother, my friend is here. I have to go fetch him." He was quite helpless because when he received Lu Ye's message and was about to go pick up someone, his mother also sent him a message. As a result, when he came here, his mother actually wanted to test him on the results of his recent cultivation. If it was any other time, he would just test it. He was quite satisfied with his recent cultivation results and was confident that he wouldn't disappoint his mother. However, now wasn't the time. Jiuyan heard and said, "Don't worry, I've already asked your Aunt Yu to fetch your friend. He's in the Jingxin Hall now. Once I'm done with the test, you can go and see him." When Chu Xin heard that his mother had arranged everything, he didn't say anything else and answered Jiuyan's question seriously. Between the questions and answers, Jiuyan's expression gradually became gratified. "My son has grown up." In the past, although Chu Xin was talented, he couldn't settle down. Especially after he was promoted to a constellation, he always thought of ways to go out. However, after the previous incident, Chu Xin obviously grew up a lot. Recently, he didn't talk about going out. Even without her orders, Chu Xin was working on his cultivation. Of course, she knew the reason. Chu Xin didn't know the importance of strength in the past. He only thought that he could live freely as long as he had Sunshine as his mother. But now that he deeply understood the importance of strength, he naturally couldn't wait to become stronger. Looking at it this way, although the previous incident was a blow to Chu Xin, it was actually a good thing in the long run. But to balance. Chu Xin said seriously, "I will remember. Mother, don't worry. I know what to do and what not to do." Jiuyan nodded in satisfaction. "Since that's the case, you may go." Chu Xin bowed and turned to leave. He had been delayed here for almost 2 hours. Big brother must be anxious from waiting. When he saw him later, he had to apologize to him. Moreover, he had to explain the matter of the Peerless Island to Big Brother clearly. "China." Jiuyan's voice suddenly came from behind. Chu Xin stopped and turned to look back. "Mother, do you have any other instructions?" Jiuyan hesitated for a moment before asking, "What do you think of this friend of yours?" Chu Xin didn't answer directly. Instead, he thought carefully for a moment before saying, "Although we haven't known each other for a long time and haven't interacted much, I feel that Senior Brother Li is a person with a bright future. As for his temperament, I can't say that he's pure, but he has morals." He paused for a moment before saying, "Mother, although I don't have much experience, I can still distinguish between people I can befriend and people I need to keep a respectful distance from." He obviously misunderstood that Jiuyan was afraid that he wouldn't be careful with his friends. Jiuyan nodded slightly. "A person with morals can indeed be befriended. You can go." Chu Xin hurriedly left Jiuyan's side and finally arrived at Righteous Heart Hall. He looked around curiously because he found that the door to Righteous Heart Hall was closed. He didn't understand. Since Aunt Yu had arranged for Big Brother to stay here, why did she close the door? He didn't think too much about it. He took a few steps forward and pushed the door open. When he looked inside, he was stunned. Lu Ye's face was pale and he was sweating profusely. He was standing there with his back hunched. When their eyes met, Chu Xin saw a trace of confusion in Lu Ye's eyes. Lu Ye was indeed a little confused. While he was waiting for Chu Xin, the entire hall was pitch black. More importantly, he was carrying a huge pressure on his body that made it impossible for him to move. The person who had secretly attacked him had controlled his strength perfectly. It was the kind of strength that could make him feel great pressure without causing him any harm. At first he thought that it was Aunt Yu who had secretly attacked him, but after thinking about it carefully he felt that something was wrong. Even if Aunt Yu was at the late stage of Yu Yao, her strength couldn't be so exquisite. If it wasn't Aunt Yu, Lu Yi didn't dare to think about it. But why? Could it be that she was warning him to stay away from Chu Shen in the future? Because of the matter on Peerless Island, she felt that he had implicated Chu Shen? If that was the case, she could have just shown up and said a few words. There was no need to torment him like this. This was clearly just a small punishment. When Chu Shen opened the door, the boundless darkness that surrounded him quickly melted away like snowflakes under the blazing sun. Not even a trace of it remained. Chu Shen obviously didn't notice anything strange. Big brother? Chu Shen was shocked and quickly went forward to support Lu Yi. What's wrong with you? He really couldn't understand. Big brother was just waiting for him here. How did he end up like this? It was as if he had fought a strong enemy. Lu Yi glanced at him and didn't even have the strength to speak. He felt extremely empty, as if he had been hollowed out. With Chu Shen's help, he sat down beside Chu Shen. Chu Shen hurriedly took out a few top-grade spirit pills and fed them to Lu Yi before standing to the side and waiting anxiously. Lu Yi didn't know what kind of pills Chu Shen had fed him, but from their effects he could tell they were all top-grade spirit pills. After an incense stick's worth of time, Lu Yi barely recovered. Although his body was still a little empty, his complexion was rosy. Chu Shen asked again, "Big brother, what happened?" Lu Yi glanced at him and saw that his concerned expression wasn't fake, shaking his head. "When I was waiting for you, I was bored and tried to comprehend a secret technique. However, I made a mistake and suffered some backlash." He couldn't tell him the truth. If that person really had any complaints about his dealings with Chu Shen, she might be monitoring this place right now. Chu Shen didn't know whether to laugh or cry and asked with concern, "Are you feeling better now?" "It's nothing serious." Only then did Chu Shen relax. Suddenly he cupped his fists towards Lu Yi and bowed down. His voice was heavy as he said, "Big brother, little brother has let you down." Lu Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. "What do you mean?" Chu Shen's voice was sorrowful. "In the years that Big brother was not here, I lost the matchless island." Lu Yi had thought Chu Shen had done something wrong, but it turned out to be this. He raised his hand and helped Chu Shen up. "Your fists aren't as big as others, there's no need to blame yourself. Even if I was here, I wouldn't have been of any use. What should be lost would have been lost. But Unique Island is still Big brother's place," Chu Shen said with a guilty expression. If Lu Yi hadn't agreed to let him stay on Unique Island with a few women, how could things have turned out like this? In Chu Shen's opinion, Unique Island would only have one master, Li Tai Bai. He was just a steward on the surface. Lu Yi shook his head. "Unique Island isn't just mine, half of it is yours." If it weren't for Chu Shen's hard work over the years, Unique Island wouldn't be as prosperous as it was now. Even if Lu Yi could turn Unique Island into a spiritual island with the help of the minor constellation hall, the most likely result would be various forces fighting over it. It was precisely because of Chu Shen's background that he was able to smoothly form a cooperative relationship with various forces, allowing Unique Island to rise in a short period of time. "Tell me in detail." Lu Yi gestured for Chu Shen to sit down and talk. "I just returned to the Wanxiang Sea not long ago, so I don't know what happened to Unique Island. I only know that it has changed its name to Sky Spill Island. This Sky Spill, is it your Wanxiang Galaxy's Tianyin?" Chu Shen's expression darkened. "Yes, it is our galaxy's Sky Spill. You can guard against anything, but you can't guard against a thief in your own home. I never thought that Unique Island would be stolen by my own family." Chu Shen narrated the events of Unique Island. At the end of the day, there was a saying that a man's wealth was his own ruin. If Unique Island was merely a high-class spiritual island, it wouldn't be a big deal, and the situation could still be maintained. However, the minor constellation hall under Unique Island continued to play its role. Just a year ago, Unique Island, which had already been promoted to a high-class spiritual island, actually showed signs of transforming into a top-class spiritual island. Outsiders could only guess, as there was no way to prove it. However, Chu Shen knew that Unique Island was really transforming into a top-class spiritual island. This was because he discovered traces of a spiritual jade mine in a place that was not open to outsiders. This was a sign that only a top-class spiritual island would have. Chu Shen immediately knew that this was a serious matter. There weren't many top-class spiritual islands in the entire Wanxiang Sea, and they were all occupied by the top forces. Although he had Jiao Yan as his backer, Unique Island's overall strength was on the low side. It was only because it had countless connections with various forces that it was able to maintain peace. However, once news of the spiritual jade mine spread, who knew what kind of storm it would cause? Chapter 1622. Since ancient times, there had been cases of deserted islands reviving and spiritual islands dying in the Vientiane Sea. However, for those spiritual islands that were revived for unknown reasons, they were at most promoted to a high-class spiritual island. Furthermore, there were only a handful of such cases. There had never been a case of a deserted island being promoted to a top-class spiritual island after being revived. This was the first time in history that Matchless Island had become a top-class spiritual island. There were only a handful of top-class spiritual islands in the entire Wanxiang Sea. When the news spread, which force would not be tempted? One should know that a top-tier spiritual island was equivalent to a top-tier realm. Both of them could produce spiritual jade mineral veins. The only difference was the quantity. A top-tier realm might have more than one spiritual jade mineral vein, but a top-tier spiritual island only had one spiritual jade mineral vein. Even so, many people were tempted to take action. Everyone knew that Matchless Island was not very powerful on the surface. However, due to Chushin's background, it was not easy for the external forces that coveted Matchless Island to make a move. It was not easy for the external forces to make a move, but the local forces had less to worry about. In fact, when the unparalleled island had been promoted to a high-class spirit island, many local forces had wanted to get a piece of the pie from Chushin. This was because, on the surface, Chushin only had Jiao Yan as his backer. However, at the end of the day, Chushin was a cultivator from the Wanxiang galaxy. Behind him stood the entire galaxy's sunshine. Those Rizhao did not care about small profits. However, when the profits were huge enough, they could not help but be tempted. They were willing to let Chushin use them as his backer. Naturally, they had the right to get some benefits from Chushin. Therefore, some people wanted to arrange for some people to enter Matchless Island. Those people included not only Xingxiu but also Yu Yao. They said that Matchless Island should have the ability to protect itself now that it had grown. However, in reality they wanted to use this method to achieve their goal of controlling Matchless Island. If Peerless Island really belonged to Chushin alone, perhaps he would have agreed. He was not an unreasonable person. He also knew that he had unknowingly borrowed the prestige of the many sunshine in the galaxy, so it was understandable for him to share some of the benefits. However, Matchless Island did not belong to him alone. Moreover, he knew that Lu Yi would bring a group of people with him when he returned to his homeland. When the time came, those people would definitely be arranged to stay on Matchless Island. Naturally, this would strengthen Matchless Island's ability to protect itself. If he arranged for enough people now, what would happen to the people Lu Yi brought with him when he returned? He would not be able to answer to his big brother then. Therefore Chushin could only refuse. Although this made many of them unhappy, they couldn't really make things difficult for a junior because of Jiao Yan's reputation. Until the news that Matchless Island had become a top-class spiritual island spread, Nikidoresu could no longer sit still. Although the Vientiane Sea was in the Vientiane galaxy, the galaxy had only ever controlled one top-grade spiritual island, the Vientiane Island. It wasn't that the Wanxiang galaxy didn't want to get more top-grade spirit islands. It was just that the other forces that occupied the top-grade spirit islands all had powerful backgrounds. Now that he finally had the chance to occupy the second top-grade spiritual island, how could he miss it? Some things could not be stopped just because Jiao Yan disagreed. Jiao Yan was only one person. She could not represent the entire galaxy. Hence, it was decided that Rizhao would take back Matchless Island and make it part of the Wanxiang galaxy. After that, cultivators from the Wanxiang star system came to Chushin. They tried to reason with him. Chushin did not reject them. Instead, he pretended to be polite. He wanted to drag it out until Lu Yi returned. Even if he had to lose Matchless Island, he could not let it fall into his hands. However, those who coveted Matchless Island gradually lost their patience. Seeing that Chushin was not sincere, they could only threaten him with force. Anyway, on the Wanxiang Sea, attacking spiritual islands was a common occurrence. It was not rare. The attack and defense of a spiritual island began. Unfortunately, Matchless Island was too weak. Even though Lu Yi had spent a lot of money to set up a defensive array, it could not stop the enemy. With Matchless Island's strength, many forces could take it down. However, no one dared to do so. It was a slap in the face to the Wanxiang galaxy. Who would want to make a living here in the future? However, if they took over the Wanxiang galaxy, it would not be a problem. Matchless Island is lost just like that. The profits from these few years are also gone. Chu Xin's expression was gloomy. The battle that day was not too intense. Chu Xin did not suffer any attacks. He was only captured alive by Yu Yao. Most of the cultivators recruited by Matchless Island knew the truth of the battle. In fact, they did not resist. Only one person resisted fiercely. That person was Tang Jun. Old Tang knew that Matchless Island was a foothold for the Jade Conch Galaxy cultivators. If Matchless Island was lost, even if the Jade Conch Galaxy cultivators came, they would not have a good future. Therefore he fought with his life in that battle. He did not care about his own life. He was not fighting for his own pride. He was fighting for the future of the three realms. I've never seen Elder Tang like that. Chu Xin sighed. All along, Elder Tang had always given him the impression that he was an amiable person. Usually he would drink and make merry on Matchless Island, living a carefree life like a rich man. Who would have thought that at the most critical moment on Matchless Island, this old man who usually did nothing would fight the fiercest? Unfortunately, he was not strong enough. Several of his magic treasures were broken. He was also seriously injured. The enemy would not make things difficult for Chu Xin. However, why would they care about an old Yu Yao like Tang Jun who did not have a strong background? Many people died on the Wanxiang Sea every year. It did not matter if Tang Jun was there or not. Especially when Tang Jun looked like he was going to fight with his life. It aroused the enemy's killing intent. Under Tang Jun's influence, Little Dumb, Crooked Tooth, and the others who followed Chu Xin earlier were also fighting with their lives. In the end, it was Chu Xin who spoke up and saved their lives. Of course, it was not without a price. The profits of Matchless Island in recent years were the money for these people's lives. How much? Lu Yi asked. Chu Xin said bitterly, about 60 million spirit jades. Lu Yi silently calculated. Tang Jun, Little Dumb, Crooked Tooth, Kai Xing, Kaiyu, and Lucky Star were exactly 6 people. The money to buy their lives was really expensive. On average, it was 10 million spirit jades per person. However, it was good that they were alive. If they lost spirit jades, they could earn more. If they died, there would be nothing left. What about Ghost? She should have already become a Yu Yao at that time. Did she not participate in the battle? Lu Yi asked again. Chu Xin said, she participated in the battle. However, senior sister Ghost had just become a Yu Yao. She could not be of much use. She was constantly entangled by the other Yu Yao and could not get away. Was Puku there at that time? Chu Xin shook his head. Ever since senior brother Puku left that year, there has been no news of him. Lu Yi understood. Puku had told him before he left. Since then he probably had not returned. He did not know how he was doing now. Did he avoid the betrothal arranged by Ruan too? Speaking of which, other than the girl's temperament being a little cold, she had a good figure and good looks. Moreover, she was a Yu Yao. He did not know what Puku was hiding from. How is Elder Tang now? Chu Xin asked. Elder Tang has not fully recovered from his injuries. However, he should be fine now. He will be able to recover after resting for a while. However, the incident on the Peerless Island seemed to have affected him greatly. Recently, he has been rather dispirited and listless. Big brother, do you want to go and take a look? Of course he had to go and take a look. Although Elder Tang had not been of much use in that battle and had almost been beaten to death, his backbone was worthy of respect. Now he finally understood the whole story behind the incident on the Peerless Island. It was somewhat similar to what he had guessed. However, Lu Yi had not expected the Minor Constellation Palace to be so powerful. Earlier, when he had set up the Minor Constellation Palace, he had deliberately controlled its power so that the speed at which it converted the 10,000 elephant seas water was maintained at a low level. He had not expected that the Peerless Island would be transformed into a top-grade spiritual island so quickly. I still have some things to ask you, Lu Yi said after deliberating for a moment. Big brother, just say it. Chu Xin looked at him seriously. Lu Yi hesitated for a moment. In the end, he could not help but ask, did I offend your mother in some way? Chu Xin was surprised. Big brother, why do you say that? He then asked, Big brother, have you met my mother? Lu Yi shook his head. He had indeed not met Jiao Yan. Since I have not met her, how could I have offended her? Moreover, my mother said just now that Big brother is a person of integrity and is someone worth befriending. Lu Yi was curious. Your mother said that? Absolutely. That was strange. If Jiao Yan felt that he was someone worth befriending, then why did she make things difficult for him just now? No matter what, he was a guest. Even if she did not treat him with respect, there was no need to do so. However, he could not ask Jiao Yan anything in person. Big brother, did my mother say something to you through voice transmission? Chu Shen misunderstood and hurriedly asked. No, Senior Jiu Yen did not say anything to me. Chu Shen looked at him suspiciously. He did not know if he believed him. He did not understand this matter. Lu Yi was certain that Jiu Yen had done something to him just now. In the world of car bells, other than her, no one else had this ability. Also, Lu Yi spoke again. Is Bansi from your world of car bells? No. Chu Shen was stunned. He did not know why Lu Yi kept asking such strange questions today. Are car bells? Chapter 1623. Ever since Half Ci left in the secret domain, not to mention Chu Shen, Lu Yi had not seen her again. It was as if she had disappeared into thin air. What happened that time was an accident and there was nothing they could do. Because the two of them were affected by the Heaven Desire Demon Spider, Half Ci wanted to lure it out so they could only use that method. Otherwise, whether it was her or Lu Yi, they would have died in the secret domain. The result was not bad. The Heaven Desire Demon Spider did appear and was killed by her and Lu Yi. Before that, Lu Yi did not have much interaction with her, and they were not even familiar with each other. This woman was really free and easy, Lu Yi thought to himself. If a woman could be so free and easy, he naturally would not entangle himself with her, so although he had not seen Half Ci since then, he did not think of inquiring about her whereabouts. Strangers meeting by chance forget about each other. The reason why he asked at this time was mainly because he found a person in the carriage bell domain. When he was brought over by Antyu, he saw the figure of a little girl about 10 years old in the valley. At that time he only felt that she was a little familiar, and vaguely felt that he had seen her somewhere before, but did not think too much about it. But just now a light flashed in his mind. He vaguely felt that the little girl's face was similar to the little girl he and Half Ci saved in that domain. Back then, when he and Half Ci passed through that domain, all the creatures in that domain had been slaughtered by the Heaven Desire Demon Spider. The two of them split up and Half Ci found a survivor in a cellar. That was the only survivor in the entire domain, and was later taken into a small world by Half Ci. If the little girl he saw just now was really the little girl he saved from that unknown domain, then the matter was somewhat thought-provoking. If Half Ci was not from the carriage bell domain, then why was the little girl here? Calculating the time, a few years had passed, and the little girl had probably grown up, and her appearance was indeed very similar to the little girl he saved back then. Or perhaps, Half Ci was related to the carriage bell domain, and Chu Shen did not know that she sent the little girl to the carriage bell domain? When I came, I saw a little girl about 10 years old. Lu Yi described the scene and the appearance of the girl at that time. When Chu Shen heard this, he knew who he was talking about. Big brother should be talking about Wuxia. Wuxia? Lu Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. Wuxia. It would be too much of a coincidence if this was just a coincidence. She was a disciple that Antyu took in a few years ago. I don't know where Antyu found her. At that time I was still at Unparalleled Island. I only heard from Antyu that Wuxia was the child of the domain. With luck on her body, she would definitely have great achievements in the future. What's the saying about the child of a domain? Lu Yi was a little curious. Chu Shen sighed. I heard from Antyu that Wuxia was also a pitiful child. The domain she was born in had experienced a shocking change, and everyone in the domain had died, leaving only her alive. So Antyu said that in such a situation, the luck of the entire domain would be added to one person. Even if her cultivation talent was poor, she would definitely have great opportunities in the future and her achievements would not be low. If not for this, Antyu would not have taken her in as a disciple. But from the current situation, Wuxia not only has luck on her body, her cultivation talent is also very good. Antyu has high hopes for her. Lu Ye's heart trembled slightly. There was no doubt that little girl called Wuxia was definitely the one that Half Ci took away back then. But the strange thing was, since Wuxia was here, where had Half Ci gone? Why did Chu Shen say that Half Ci was not from the carriage bell domain? Big brother, you know Wuxia? Chu Shen asked in puzzlement. Lu Yi had no reason to suddenly ask about Wuxia, unless he had seen her before. I don't know her, I'm just asking. Lu Yi shook his head, stood up and said, Take me to see old Tang and the others. He could not understand the matter of Wuxia, but it was not good to ask, so he did not think too much about it. Big brother, come with me. Chu Shen said, standing up and heading out. In the huge hidden flower valley there was a beautiful place. Colorful flowers and plants vied for beauty here. Several women gathered together, plucking flowers and inserting them into their hair, adding to their beauty. Not far from them there was a clear lake. An old man sat by the lake, fishing with a fishing rod in his hand, his expression leisurely. Suddenly the old man's expression changed, and he turned his head to look in a certain direction. He saw Lu Yi striding over. "I heard from Chu Shen what happened before. I thought that you were lying in bed with your life hanging by a thread. I didn't think that you would be in such a leisurely and elegant mood." Lu Yi walked to Tang Jun's side, looking him up and down. He found that Tang Jun did not seem to be seriously injured on the surface, but his aura was slightly weak. Moreover, he still had the leisure to fish here. It seemed that his injuries had recovered well recently. "The old man almost died and you still came over to gloat." Tang Jun could not help but roll his eyes. When Kai Xing, Kai Yu and the others saw Lu Yi, they ran over to greet him in surprise. Lu Ye's gaze swept over them one by one, confirming that they were all fine. Even if they were injured before, their injuries were not as serious as Tang Jun's, so they had recovered by now. Moreover, their cultivation had improved. They were all at the early stage of the constellation realm before, but now they had all advanced to the middle stage of the constellation realm. "When did you come back?" Tang Jun took out a chair from the storage ring, placed it beside him, and waited for Lu Yi to sit down before asking. "Half a month ago," Lu Yi replied. "How was the trip?" Tang Jun asked again. This was what he was concerned about. Since Lu Yi had returned, it meant that he had really returned to Jade Conch and then ran back. "Not bad. In Jade Conch Galaxy, our 3 realms have joined forces and sent people over." "How many people from my Qingli Dao world came?" 100 people, but there were some accidents on the way and about 20 people died. In the battle with the Insect Clan and the Blood Clan outside the Indefinite Region, a total of more than 60 cultivators from the 3 realms had died. Only about 10 cultivators from the 9 states had died, and the rest were from the other 2 realms. The corner of Tang Jun's eyes twitched. He was obviously distressed, but he also knew that it was normal for accidents to happen on such a long starry sky journey. Only 20 people died out of more than 100 people, which was a very good result. Wuxia is a little conservative. Tang Jun sighed. Given the 10,000 Elephant Sea's reputation, it was rare for them to encounter such an opportunity, but they actually only sent 100 people. This was somewhat inconsistent with Wuxia's temperament. Tang Jun was afraid that Wuxia wouldn't believe Lu Yi, so he specially gave Lu Yi a jade slip to bring back. "It has nothing to do with Wuxia. I think he wants to send more people over, but there are only 100 people in Jade Conch Galaxy, so he probably can't send more." Jade Conch had only sent 100 people, but that was out of caution. After all, none of them were in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. All the information they received was from Wuxia and Lu Yi, so they didn't dare to believe it until they saw it with their own eyes. Jade Conch Galaxy only sent 100 people, so the Qingli Dao world naturally could not outnumber Jade Conch Galaxy. On the other hand, the 9 states had no qualms and sent 300 people directly. The fishing rod sank slightly, and it was obvious that a fish had taken the bait. Tang Jun was not in the mood to raise the rod. Instead, he sighed heavily. "I am sorry that I could not protect Wushuang Island." He knew about the situation of Wushuang Island. Although Chu Shen was the manager on the surface, half of Wushuang Island belonged to Lu Yi. When Lu Yi left, he left Wushuang Island to him, but when Lu Yi came back, Wushuang Island was gone. If Wushuang Island was still around, the cultivators of the 3 realms would have a natural place to stay. Furthermore, Wushuang Island was such a prosperous place that it was one of the best in the entire Wanxiang Sea. The cultivators of the 3 realms who rushed over from Jade Conch Galaxy could be said to have reached the sky in a single bound. In the future, they would not have to worry about cultivation resources. As long as they cultivated diligently, their cultivation would continue to improve and strengthen the power of their respective domains. However, Wushuang Island had changed owners and even its name was changed. What future could they talk about? After being in the Wanxiang Sea for so many years, Tang Jun was considered a wily old fox. Naturally, he knew how difficult it was for ordinary cultivators to gain a foothold in the Wanxiang Sea. Even if the cultivators of the 3 realms joined forces this time, they were not strong enough to fight against Yu Yao. Their future days would not be easy. What was the point of occupying a deserted island if they could not take down a spiritual island? Could it be that with so many people in the 3 realms, they could only do menial tasks for others to earn spiritual jades? Thinking of this, he was glad that only 100 people came from his own domain. Wushuang Island is gone, so be it. As long as we are alive, Lu Yi said. Tang Jun looked surprised. "You don't blame me for not doing well in the battle?" Lu Yi said curiously. "Their fists are bigger. You're using an egg to hit a rock. It's good enough that you're still alive. Do you want to beat them all away?" That's not realistic. Moreover, Lu Yi was not even present during the Great Battle. He did not even contribute a bit of his strength. How could he blame someone who had contributed so much and almost lost his life? Tang Jun stared deeply at him. After a long while he laughed. I'm old. I've really become muddle-headed. I'm not as clear-sighted as a youngster like you. I hate you. Lu Yi said, What do you hate? Tang Jun said bitterly, If I'd known that you would think like this, I wouldn't have resisted so fiercely. In the end, not only was my resistance useless, I even caused the island master to lose all his profits over the years. If he had not fought to the death earlier, the invading enemies would not have wanted to kill him. Then Chu Shen would not have used spiritual jades to buy their lives later. In this way, even if Wushuang Island was lost, he could at least keep his 60 million spiritual jades. That was 60 million spiritual jades. Tang Jun had never seen so many spiritual jades in his life. During this period of time, every time he thought about how he had lost so many spiritual jades because of his stubbornness, his heart bled. Lu Yi raised his hand and patted him on the shoulder. Everything is possible as long as you're alive. You can earn more spiritual jades if you lose them. When you're old, you should be more peaceful. Only then can you live a few more years. Don't always think about useless things and shorten your life. Tang Jun immediately blew his beard and glared at him. Don't talk to me like an old man lecturing his son. I'm old enough to be your ancestor. You're so rude. Although he said this, Tang Jun's melancholy expression was obviously much more relieved. Chapter 1624. Now that Unparalleled Island was lost, Tang Jun found it hard to face Lu Yi. Now that he saw that Lu Yi did not seem to care about the loss of Unparalleled Island, he was relieved. He was secretly shocked. Li Taibai's temperament was truly impressive. That was a top-grade spiritual island that even Rizhao was tempted by. Yet, it was forcefully taken over by someone else. Li Taibai didn't seem to feel any heartache at all. This wasn't something that a young man like him could have. In comparison, this old man was more like a rash and impatient brat. Lu Yi stood up and stretched. Then he said, Then let's go? You can't be thinking of spending the rest of your life here, right? The Che-Ling realm also wouldn't let them stay here forever. This time they could come to the Che-Ling realm to recuperate. It was all thanks to Chu Shen. Now that Tang Jun and the others' injuries were almost healed, even if Lu Yi didn't come, they wouldn't stay here for long. Tang Jun kept his fishing rod and patted his butt. Let's go. Chu Shen urged him to stay. Big brother, do you want to stay here for a while? I haven't prepared a welcome dinner for you yet. It was rare for his big brother to come. How could he not show some appreciation? Lu Yi shook his head. There are hundreds of people from the 3 realms waiting at the 10,000 Elephant Sea. I have to go back and take care of them. I will come again in the future. Hearing this, Chu Shen did not insist. He nodded and said, Then big brother must come often. I will send you all off. After a while, a few figures shot into the sky and flew out of the realm. Outside the Che-Ling realm, Chu Shen paused, his expression somewhat reluctant. Big brother, I'll send you off to this point. Lu Yi looked at him. Cultivate well, we'll meet again sooner or later. Chu Shen clenched his fists. He looked determined. Big brother, don't worry. I will cultivate well. Whatever we lost this time, I will take it back personally and return it to big brother. In the past, he was proud of his talent and had Jiu Yan as his backing. Therefore, he only wanted to be free. Otherwise, he would not have run away from home so many times. But after the incident at Unparalleled Island, Chu Shen understood that even if his mother was Ri Guang, backing would never be as good as his own fist. After leaving Wushuang Island and returning to Che-Ling Jie, he had a desire to become stronger that he had never had before. Lu Yi patted Chu Shen's shoulder and said, There are some things that you don't have to be stubborn about. You just have to be yourself. There's a saying? He muttered to himself for a while, then turned to look in the direction of the Wanxiang Sea and said, Sit and watch him build a skyscraper. Watch him entertain guests. Watch him collapse. Chu Shen was slightly confused. Lu Yi did not explain. He just said, Unparalleled Island being in your hands and in other people's hands might not be the same thing. Of course we'll remember this grudge. If there's a chance in the future we'll get our revenge. If Unparalleled Island was lost, then so be it. Outsiders only thought that it was a top-notch spiritual island, but only Lu Yi knew the real situation. As long as he took away the minor constellation hall that was placed under Unparalleled Island, it wouldn't be long before Unparalleled Island returned to its original state. After all, fundamentally speaking, Unparalleled Island was just a deserted island, not a true spiritual island. Without the minor constellation palace's ability to reverse the seawater's flow, it shouldn't be able to last for long. However, Lu Yi could not ignore the profits of Unparalleled Island in the past few years. After all, it was 60 million spiritual jades and he wanted half of it. Lu Yi and the others left. Chu Xin stood in place and watched them leave. Only when they disappeared from his sight did he harden his heart and return to Che Ling realm. He had to become stronger as soon as possible. He did not want to experience the humiliation and helplessness from before again. In the starry sky, the planetary boat moved forward. Lu Yi looked at the girls and asked, "Junior sisters, what are your plans for the future?" When he was disguised as Fa Wuzuan, these girls had interacted with him before. They had fought alongside him in the Minor Constellation Hall. After the Minor Constellation Hall closed, Chu Xin found them and formed a small team with them, advancing and retreating together. Now that Chu Xin was staying in Che Ling realm to cultivate, they could not stay here. They could only leave with Lu Yi. Therefore Lu Yi had to ask them about their plans. If they were willing to continue following him, Lu Yi naturally did not mind keeping them. During the battle on Unparalleled Island, they had already proven their bravery and loyalty. Of course, if they had other ideas, Lu Yi would not stop them. The girls looked at each other. Obviously they had already made a decision. Caixing said, "We want to follow Senior Fellow Apprentice. I hope Senior Fellow Apprentice will not abandon us and take us in." Although they had all reached the middle stage of constellation, they all came from some small realms. With such cultivation and background, they were not competitive in the Vientiane Sea. Even if they were beautiful, they were not very attractive in the eyes of real practitioners. If Chu Xin had not found them and integrated them into a team, and they had enjoyed a few years of happiness on Unparalleled Island, they would not have reached the middle stage of constellation so quickly. Now Unparalleled Island was gone, and Chu Xin stayed in Che Ling realm. Except for relying on Lu Yi, they really had no other place to go. They could not wander on the Vientiane Sea. And they were not stupid. In recent years, through some clues, especially Chu Xin's attitude and address to Lu Yi, these girls faintly realized that Lu Yi might be Fa Wuzuan in the past. They admired Fa Wuzuan very much. That was the reason to follow him. Maybe there was an exception. Xiao Dai might not be able to realize that Lu Yi was Fa Wuzuan. She always looked silly. Lu Yi said, "In that case, you can follow me from now on." Anyway, there were hundreds of practitioners in the three realms. It would not make a difference if they joined. Moreover, they were familiar with Old Tang. When the time came, they should not be too unfamiliar with the practitioners of the three realms. Moreover, the cultivators of the three dimensions had just arrived here, so Caixing and the others were undoubtedly more familiar with the Myriad Ocean. So, with their assistance, it would be able to allow the cultivators of the three dimensions to quickly assimilate into the Myriad Ocean. After all, Old Tang was Yu Yao. He could not worry about everything. While they were talking, a flowing light suddenly swept out from the side and hit the star boat directly. Lu Yi felt a familiar aura. He frowned and looked in that direction. He did not know what the hell this woman was doing. The flowing light quickly approached. Just as it was about to crash into Lu Ye's arms, Lu Yi dodged to the side and chopped down with his palm. A trace of anger flashed through the woman's eyes. She clearly showed that she was seriously injured, but in the end, Li Taibai didn't know how to take care of the fairer sex. Instead, he took the opportunity to deal a heavy blow to her. She almost couldn't help but fight back. Fortunately, she forced herself to suppress the thought in her mind at the critical moment and let Lu Ye's palm chop her waist. A miserable cry rang out. There was another person on the star boat. He was still vomiting blood. Crooked Teeth Chow was shocked. "Senior Marshal Sister Ghost, what happened to you?" He quickly bent down to help her up. Ghost lay in Crooked Teeth Chow's arms with a pale face. Her soft majesty was slightly distorted by her head. She vomited another mouthful of blood and looked at Lu Yi pitifully. "Li Taibai, I can't hold on any longer." Lu Yi looked at her with rapt attention and frowned secretly. Lu Yi was certain that Ghost's injuries were fake because there was no reason for things to be so coincidental. They had just come out of the carriage bell realm when they met her. However, no matter how Lu Yi looked, he could not see any traces of her disguise. This injury was just like a real one. And what did this woman want to do? He said faintly, "There is a desolate star over there. I will help you dig a grave there. Is there any valuable inheritance? You can take it out first so that it won't be wasted." Dumbo and others were dumbfounded. Ghost only felt that Li Taibai was simply heartless. He was really the most vicious person in the world. She suppressed her anger and gasped, "I have nothing on me. I am innocent." Li Taibai, after I die, help me pass a message to Bai Lu. Tell her that I can't go to see her anymore. Hearing her mention Bai Lu, Lu Yi suddenly realized that she was waiting for her here. Bai Lu and she were really good sisters who went through life and death together. If she died, how could Bai Lu have a good end? She would definitely be buried with her. Before, Ghost asked Lu Yi to send her to the mermaid territory. Lu Yi ignored her and then Ghost left. Lu Yi was a little surprised at that time. When did Ghost become so easy to talk to? Now it seemed that Ghost was not easy to talk to, but had other plans. She was obviously using this method to force Lu Yi, telling him that if she died, Bai Lu could not live alone. Lu Yi slightly lowered his eyes and squinted at Ghost. Ghost looked back with a pitiful and helpless face. The divine light in her eyes seemed to be getting dimmer and dimmer, as if it would be extinguished at any time. Crooked Teeth, who was holding her, cried. Tears fell down and they begged Lu Yi, "Senior brother, save senior sister Ghost." The other women also looked distressed. Although they didn't have much contact with Spectre, they had worked together on Matchless Island. Now that they saw that Spectre was seriously injured and was about to die, they all felt miserable. Of course, Lu Yi knew that Ghost would not die. But thinking about it carefully, if he did not send her to the mermaid territory, she would still implicate Bai Lu if she killed herself outside. Sending her to the mermaid territory could at least guarantee her safety. Promise me, Li Taibai. This is my last wish. Are you going to refuse even this small request? Ghost's voice trembled, full of blood and tears. Crooked Teeth and the others did not know who Bai Lu was, but at this moment they felt that Bai Lu must be the most important person to Ghost, and Lu Yi also knew her. They all looked at Lu Yi hoping that he would agree. Lu Yi said indifferently, "If you want to say it yourself. I won't agree to this." Crooked Teeth and the others were very disappointed. But Ghost. Chapter 1625. Ghost broke free from Lu Ye's grasp and said angrily, "I'm a Yu Yao now. Don't touch me or I'll beat you up." It was one thing if she wasn't a match for Lu Yi when they were both constellations, but now she was stronger than Lu Yi. How embarrassing. The two figures flew side by side to a desolate star not far away. A moment later, in a secluded place, Lu Yi took out her conch and blew it gently. Ghost stared at it without blinking as if she was considering whether she should snatch the conch. After staying in the merfolk's territory for such a long time, she naturally knew where this conch came from. The merfolk had a heavenly conch palace, which was an extremely strange secret realm. Anyone could enter it and have a chance to obtain a conch of their own. She had entered it once before, thinking that it would be a battle test. Who would have thought that the test inside the heavenly conch palace would be a musical instrument? She was a ghost cultivator, so how could she know anything about musical instruments? She reluctantly showed off a little, but naturally she didn't have a good result. She did obtain a conch. According to Bai Lu, it was a kind of jade spirit conch. As the name implied, it could be used like a spirit jade. However, Ghost only obtained the lowest grade jade spirit conch. When she carried it with her, it would absorb the energy of the surrounding stars and store it. When a cultivator needed it, they could refine it and use it. However, because the quality of Ghost's jade spirit conch was too low, she could only use it once every 10 days or half a month. In other words, this thing had to spend a long time absorbing the energy of the surrounding stars to display the same effect as a spirit jade. What use was that? The merfolk had high-quality jade spirit conches, which were real treasures. They could be used almost every day. In addition to the jade spirit conch, there was also the spirit crystal conch, which Yu Yao could use to cultivate. Lu Ye's conch undoubtedly came from the heavenly conch palace, and it had the ability to open the door to the heavenly conch palace. Ghost was very tempted. If she could obtain this conch, she wouldn't have to worry about Lu Ye's attitude anymore. She could go to the merfolk's territory whenever she wanted. However, on second thought, she dispelled the idea in her heart. Not to mention that she had fought with Lu Yi before and knew how strong Lu Yi was. She also knew that Lu Yi was obviously closer to the merfolk. Therefore, even if she snatched this conch, she would lose more than she gained if the merfolk didn't want to see her. The conch's voice and a mysterious power, a door, appeared in front of her. Ghost didn't wait for Lu Yi to call out to her. She plunged into the cave with ease, looking impatient. Lu Yi. When she appeared, Lu Ye's Baiz's heavenly conch palace appeared. Sure enough, not long after, Bai Lu's figure appeared before his eyes. Compared to a few years ago, she hadn't changed much. She still had the body of a human and the tail of a fish, and her beauty was beyond compare. As if she was rather excited, her fish tail swayed gently as she looked at Lu Yi with some surprise. "Li Taibai, you're back?" Before Lu Yi left the 10,000 Elephant Sea, she had specially come to greet the merfolk, so Bai Lu knew that Lu Yi would spend a lot of time on this trip, so she had been waiting. Who would have thought that she would suddenly feel a familiar fluctuation in the heavenly conch palace today? She came to take a look and sure enough, Lu Yi had returned. Lu Yi nodded. I'm back. Ghost was unconvinced. I'm back too. Why didn't you greet me? I'm your good sister who has gone through life and death with you. Back then, when Bai Lu used a trick to link their lives together, she felt a little uncomfortable. However, after cultivating with Bai Lu and experiencing the joy of rapidly improving her strength, she didn't have any other thoughts. Otherwise, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to ask Lu Yi to send her back this time. What was so good about the 10,000 Elephant Sea? The merfolk territory was a holy land for cultivation. Here, she had people and resources, so she only needed to cultivate. Ghost felt that with this method of cultivation she would be able to advance to sunshine sooner or later, and she didn't know how much time she would save. Bai Lu pursed her lips and smiled. Senior sister Ghost, you're here too. Ghost looked angry. Too. Ghost said as if she was Li Tai Bai's assistant. She really didn't understand. What was so good about this man? Why did everyone in the merfolk treat him so well? Bai Lu looked at Lu Yi. Did your trip go smoothly? Was fine. Although there were some twists and turns, it wasn't a big problem. Lu Yi replied. Ghost wanted to come to see you, so I sent her off. I just returned to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. There are a lot of things to do, so I'll go back first. I'll visit another day. Although Bai Lu was reluctant, she didn't stop him. Just as she was about to say something, a voice suddenly came from the side. Fellow Taoist, don't be in such a hurry to leave. Lu Yi turned his head and saw Great Elder Yen Miao walking over. Great Elder. Lu Yi nodded. Yen Miao came in front of Lu Yi and said, Fellow Taoist, don't be in a hurry to leave. I have something to ask of you. Please speak, Great Elder. Yen Miao didn't speak directly. Instead, he glanced at Ghost. Fellow Taoist Ghost, you should go and rest. Ghost realized that what Yen Miao wanted to say might not be convenient for her to hear, but she didn't mind. Everyone had things that were inconvenient to tell others. She said goodbye to Bai Lu and turned to leave. In terms of familiarity with the Huang Snail Palace, she was even more familiar with it than Lu Yi. It had become her second home. After Ghost left, Lu Yi said, If Great Elder has something to say, there's no harm in saying it. If it's within my power, I won't refuse. Yen Miao smiled. Then I'll get straight to the point. I hope fellow Taoist can bring a few of our clansmen to the shrine. As she spoke, she glanced at Bai Lu. Clearly she was one of those clansmen. The shrine that Yen Miao spoke of was the Constellation Hall. Lu Yi naturally knew this. However, although the Constellation Hall was located in the depths of the 10,000 Elephant Sea and wasn't too far away from the Merfolk clan, the Merfolk clan didn't know much about the Constellation Hall. Normally they couldn't enter the Constellation Hall. They could only enter when the Constellation Hall was open. Currently, the Constellation Hall wasn't open. Only Lu Yi could open the doors to the Constellation Hall. Therefore, if they wanted to enter the shrine, they could only ask for Lu Ye's help. Before Lu Yi could ask, Yen Miao took the initiative to explain. I heard fellow Taoist Ghost say that she left her name in the shrine and was given the opportunity to enter the shrine to become a Yu Yao. It seems that there are some benefits to becoming a Yu Yao in the shrine. That's true. Lu Yi nodded. If that wasn't the case, there wouldn't be so many veteran Constellation Halls who were clearly qualified to become a Yu Yao but still chose not to do so. They were waiting for the Constellation Hall to open so that they could win a ranking and obtain a chance to become a Yu Yao in the shrine. Lu Yi had encountered a few veteran Constellation Halls like this in the past. Their strength and foundation were indeed much stronger than the average late-stage Constellation Hall cultivator. Becoming a Yu Yao was a very particular matter. During this process they could use some treasures. However, those treasures were all extremely rare. Just like the Phoenix Sky's blue crystal, there were too many people who needed it. Therefore, as soon as it appeared, it would be snatched up by others. Many people didn't have the opportunity to obtain it even if they had the wealth. The Constellation Hall was a very good opportunity. In fact, it was even better than using ordinary treasures. Lu Yi understood. He glanced at Bai Lu. Princess, are you going to become a Yu Yao? Thinking about it, it made sense. When Lu Yi had first met Bai Lu, she was already a late-stage Constellation Hall cultivator. So many years had passed and Yu Ling had already become a Yu Yao. How could Bai Lu still be at the same level? Logically speaking, Bai Lu could have tried to become a Yu Yao several years ago. However, it was precisely because she had heard some things about the shrine from Yu Ling that she had held back. She wanted to wait for Lu Yi to return and then borrow the power of the shrine. To Bai Lu, this was a very good opportunity. Thus, she didn't mind waiting for a few more years. Great Elder Yen Miao said, aside from the princess, there are 2 other clansmen who are qualified to become a Yu Yao. No problem. Lu Yi immediately agreed. However, to be safe, he still explained, Great Elder, the shrine that Yu Ling entered was actually only a projection of the shrine. I don't know what kind of mysterious power it possesses that can help a constellation hall become a Yu Yao. I also don't know if the shrine itself has such a mysterious power. Thus, sending the princess and the others over is not a problem. However, whether this matter will succeed or not remains to be seen. I have also thought about this. However, since this is an opportunity, we can't miss it. Naturally, it would be best if it succeeds. Even if it doesn't, we won't lose anything. This was not wrong. In any case, they wouldn't lose anything. There was no harm in giving it a try. If it worked, when the Yu clan's constellation became a Yu Yao, they would have a good place to go. Lu Yi also wanted to know the result. After all, there were so many constellations in the 9 states. Sooner or later, Yu Yao would have to become a Yu Yao. As for himself, in the past, he had also thought about becoming a Yu Yao in the Constellation Hall. However, after understanding some of the mysteries of this process, he knew that it didn't matter whether he had the help of the Constellation Hall or not. He could become a Yu Yao anywhere. He didn't need to rely on the Constellation Hall. Great Elder, can you provide us with a vessel? Lu Yi asked. Yen Miao asked, what kind of vessel? Lu Yi took out his conch and explained, although this conch can open the door to the Tianluo Temple, it has many limitations. This door can't be maintained for too long. When the time comes, it will dissipate. Or when I go back through the door will dissipate regardless of whether the time limit is up. Therefore, this little bit of time is not enough for me to take you to the temple and come back. Yen Miao instantly understood. The journey to the temple would take at least half a day and it would take a long time. Chapter 1626. Yen Miao asked doubtfully, if that's the case, doesn't that mean you'll never be able to go to the temple? Unless Lu Yi didn't plan on going back through the portal. Lu Yi said, in addition to this restriction, my conch has another function, which is to leave an imprint in a certain place. This way, the portal you open will lead to the place where the imprint was left, and not to the front of the heavenly conch hall. Lu Yi had already tried this before. Previously, he left an imprint in the Constellation Hall, so the portal led to the Constellation Hall. If he didn't leave an imprint, the portal would lead to this place. The imprint had a time limit, but this time limit was relatively long, at least several months. Moreover, the imprint could be removed with the conch. Last time, before leaving the Constellation Hall, he used his conch to remove the imprint so that it would be easier for him to go to the merfolk territory. Yen Miao understood. So fellow Taoist wants to find a carrier and leave an imprint. Once we bring the carrier to the temple, you can open the portal and open the temple. Exactly. Lu Yi nodded. He had previously considered what to do if he wanted to go to the Constellation Hall in the future. Because of the time limit of the conch portal, he could only go to one place between the merfolk territory and the Constellation Hall. However, if he used an object that could carry an imprint, he could go to the Constellation Hall. Yen Miao thought for a moment, then took out an object from his storage ring. Do you think this will work? It looked like a jade tablet about the size of a table, but how could the thing Yen Miao took out be an ordinary jade tablet? This thing didn't look special, but as soon as it appeared, the surrounding temperature plummeted, and it was obviously cold. He wondered where Yen Miao found this thing. Whether it works or not, I'll have to give it a try. Lu Yi took her conch and poured her spirit power into it. Then she placed it on the cold jade board. Like a stamp, a conch pattern immediately appeared on the smooth cold jade board, but it quickly disappeared. Yen Miao looked disappointed, thinking it wouldn't work. However, in Lu Ye's perception, although the conch imprint disappeared, it still existed, but the imprint seemed to show signs of dissipating. This was different from when he left his imprint in the Constellation Hall. When he left his imprint in the Constellation Hall, there were no such signs. From the looks of it, different materials used to carry the conch mark would have different durations. This cold jade plate was clearly not an ordinary item. It must be some kind of treasure, and it must have some effect on the conch mark left on it. He silently estimated the rate at which the conch mark was dissipating. At this rate, it shouldn't be a problem to maintain it for a period of time. This item is feasible. Lu Yi said, to be on the safe side, Great Elder shouldn't put this item into your storage ring. Also, after I use this conch once, I can only use it again 7 days later. So, Great Elder, Please wait for me outside the temple in 7 days. I understand. I'll bring them to the temple in 7 days. Yin Miao agreed. After everything was settled, Lu Yi went through the portal and returned to the desolate planet. When he appeared, the portal disappeared. Lu Yi summoned the star boat and headed towards the 10,000 Phenomena Sea. He had just returned to the island, so he had no idea what had happened to the matchless island. Now that he had learned the whole story from Chu Shen, it was only natural that he wanted to retrieve the minor constellation palace. That thing was the real foundation of Wushuang Island. Tianyin Island only took it as a top spiritual island and was very happy. However, he didn't know how Tianyin Island's cultivators would feel after he took back the minor constellation hall and Wushuang Island fell silent again. Old Tang and the others had already set off, so he didn't have to worry about not being able to contact the people of the three realms. Some people from the Qingli Dao world also came, including Tang Xiaoya. It was easy for old Tang to contact her. He rushed all the way and finally returned to the Wanxiang Sea after a few days. He continued to fly forward leisurely until he arrived at a deserted island. This place was relatively remote and there weren't many cultivators coming and going. Lu Yi waited for a while and found a time when no one was paying attention. He first condensed a doppelganger to guard this place, while his original body plunged into the Wanxiang Sea. The power of the talent tree was activated. The huge and surging energy in the sea eroded his body uncontrollably. The burning leaves of the talent tree became brighter and clouds of gray fog rose continuously. He hadn't entered the Wanxiang Sea for a long time. However, after returning this time, he had to cultivate for a period of time and raise his foundation to the peak of the constellation realm. Although he was now at the late stage of the constellation realm, there was still a gap between him and the peak. With the insight spiritual tattoo, Lu Yi could vaguely see things even in the deep sea as long as the distance wasn't too far. After a full 2 hours, Lu Yi arrived at the bottom of Wushuang Island. This couldn't be helped. In the past, Wushuang Island was desolate and there weren't many people around. Lu Yi only needed to find a place to enter the sea and didn't have to worry about being discovered. However, he couldn't do so now. Wushuang Island was at the peak of popularity. The place he chose to enter the sea was still far from Wushuang Island. He found the place where he had placed the minor constellation hall back then. The minor constellation hall was still there. No one dared to go deep into the Wanxiang Sea. In such a shallow sea, only spirit fish like Bai Ling would appear. Other than Bai Ling, the other star beasts in the Wanxiang Sea were basically active in the deep sea. Therefore, until now, cultivators had never known that there were many precious spirit fish and star beasts in the Wanxiang Sea. Everyone thought that Bai Ling was the only one in the Wanxiang Sea. Lu Yi reached out and grabbed the minor constellation hall. Then he returned the way he came without looking back. Another 2 hours later, under the supervision of his doppelganger, his original body returned from the sea. Less than half a day later, Lu Yi obtained contact with the cultivators of the three realms and hurried over to meet them. Soon he arrived on a deserted island. Tang Jun had already arrived with a few female cultivators. However, there were not many cultivators left on the island. Out of the nearly 300 cultivators, only 50 remained. The rest were nowhere to be seen. Coming from a remote place like the 9 prefectures to a place like the Wanxiang Sea, the cultivators of the 9 prefectures were like country bumpkins who had entered a city. Everything was new to them. Before Lu Yi left, he had instructed everyone to familiarize themselves with the Wanxiang Sea. Therefore they had all formed their own groups to explore the place. Those who stayed behind were all experienced and prudent people, such as the sect master and the others. When they saw Lu Yi return, the group immediately gathered around him as if they had found their backbone. To be honest, when Lu Yi was not around they were not confident. Only after coming here did they realize how weak their own galaxy was. On the Wanxiang Sea, the overall strength of the Jade Conch constellation was far from the average, even if it was not at the bottom. Fortunately, they still had Luan Xiao and Yu Yao. She could more or less give them some peace of mind. However, if they wanted to establish a foothold on the Wanxiang Sea, relying on Yu Yao alone was useless. Others had 4 or 5 Yu Yao. Including Tang Jun, they only had 2. From Tang Jun, everyone had learned about the incident on the unparalleled island. Although they were indignant that a top-grade spiritual island had been snatched away just like that, they also knew that in the cultivation world, the one with the biggest fist was the one who had the final say. The island had been snatched away because they were not strong enough. No one mentioned anything about revenge because it was unrealistic. However, everyone remembered this in their hearts. If they had the chance in the future, they would definitely get their revenge. You said your name is Li Taibai? Tang Jun immediately questioned Lu Yi. He had known Lu Yi for so many years. They had drifted outside together and depended on each other. He had thought that they would treat each other with sincerity. Who would have thought that Lu Ye's name and background were fake? It was not until this meeting with the cultivators of the three realms that he found out that Li Taibai was not Li Taibai, but Lu Ye. Tang Jun was very hurt. Lu Ye's expression did not change as he said, "When you're outside you have to be careful. Li Taibai is another name of mine. You only know me as a person. What does my name have to do with anything?" Tang Jun was stunned by his words. He vaguely felt that it made sense, but there seemed to be something wrong. Some cultivators from the 9 states also had strange expressions as they stared at Lu Yi. This was because Li Taibai had appeared in the 9 states. He and Lu Ye were known as the two prides of the military state. Many divine sea cultivators in the myriad demon ridge had high hopes for Li Taibai. They hoped that he could surpass Lu Ye. However, for some reason, Li Taibai suddenly disappeared without a trace. At that time, some divine ocean cultivators from the Wanmo ridge wanted to find him, but they could not find any clues. In the end, they thought that Li Taibai had been killed by the Haoyan alliance. Now they knew that Li Taibai was Lu Ye and Lu Ye was Li Taibai. What twin prides of the military province? They were the same person. It was unbelievable because when the title of the twin prides of the military province was spread, Lu Yi was only at the true lake stage, but he had fooled countless divine ocean cultivators from both sides. Moreover, according to the clues they obtained, the twin prides of the military province had appeared at the same time. The two of them had even worked together to kill the Zerg. They really did not understand how Lu Ye could do this. However, on second thought, the 9 states were stabilized because of him. They rose because of him, and because of him, many cultivators could come to this prosperous place with thousands of scenes. How could such a person be taken lightly? Naturally, he could do things that ordinary people could not. Yuan Xiao didn't understand the twists and turns, but from the meaning of his words, she knew that Tang Jun had been deceived by Lu Yi. Smiling slightly, she changed the topic and said, "Junior Marshal brother, do you think this island will do?" When Lu Yi set off for the Ling boundary, he asked Yuan Xiao to bring some people to find a deserted island. He did not have any other requirements as long as it was big enough. Therefore they found this deserted island. It was indeed big, more than 3 times bigger than the unparalleled island. This was still not the biggest deserted island, but many of the other deserted islands were occupied by cultivators. No one occupied this island, so the cultivators of the 3 realms used it as a temporary base. Yes. Lu Yi nodded. When he came here, he deliberately observed this deserted island and felt that it met his requirements. It was not good for it to be too big, and it would cost a lot to set up a defensive formation. This scale was barely acceptable. Chapter 1627. What should we do next? Yuan Xiao asked again. I heard that there's a recruitment island here. There are many opportunities to earn spirit jades there. Should we send some people there? Although everyone had brought some spiritual jades with them when they set off from their respective realms, they still needed to cultivate along the way. Most of them did not have many spiritual jades left. Without spiritual jades, cultivators would not be able to cultivate. This was unacceptable. Therefore Yuan Xiao wondered if they should send some people to Laika Island to try their luck. At the very least, they had to ensure that the cultivators of the 3 realms could continue their daily cultivation. The Wanxiang Sea was a good place. It was prosperous and bustling with people. It was indeed a spectacular place. However, there was a drawback that could not be ignored. It was not easy for cultivators to obtain spirit jades. If cultivators ran out of spirit jades in the Jade Snail Galaxy, they could still search deep in the starry sky. However, in a place like the Wanxiang Sea, where could they find spirit jades? They could leave the Wanxiang Sea and search in the Wanxiang Galaxy. However, that was not the safest way. They might lose their lives before they could find any spirit jades. They had only been here for a few days, but the cultivators of the 3 realms had experienced the cruelty of this place. Those who were capable could live a comfortable life here. Those who were not could only struggle at the bottom. Every cultivator who came to the Wanxiang Sea was chasing their dreams. Some of them could make their dreams come true, while others could only leave dejectedly. Don't go to Laika Island. Lu Yi shook his head. He knew better than Yuan Xiao about the situation at Jiaolei Island. It could be said that although one could earn some spiritual jades there, it required a lot of time and effort. Moreover, many of the missions were risky. The overall strength of the cultivators of the 3 realms was already on the low side. Now they should stick together and not be separated. He looked around and said, let's set up a formation first. Since they had occupied this deserted island, they had to declare their sovereignty. They had to set up a formation here to let others know that this deserted island had an owner. This was a very normal thing to do. Many forces that did not occupy a spirit island did this. This way their cultivators would have a more private space to move around. Others would not come and disturb them. Otherwise it would be a declaration of war. A deserted island without a formation was an ownerless land. Anyone could come here. Wan Xiao was slightly worried. This island isn't small, and it's just a deserted island. Wouldn't it be too wasteful to set up a formation now? The cultivators of the three realms did not have a lot of spirit jades to begin with. Setting up the array formation would definitely require some expenditure. When the time came, everyone's spirit jades would be even more scarce. Lu Yi couldn't tell Wan Xiao the truth. He couldn't possibly tell her that this deserted island would definitely become a spiritual island in the future. He could only explain, setting up an array can save us some trouble. Otherwise, if other forces set their sights on this deserted island, there might be some conflicts. As for the cost, we can set up some simple array formations. The cost won't be too high. Wan Xiao thought for a moment and nodded. Then I'll listen to you. She turned to look at Tang Jun. What do you think, Taoist Tang? Old Tang didn't seem to care at all. Whatever Lu Yi says, I'll do it. It's never wrong to listen to him. Even though he was much older than Lu Yi, ever since he came to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, he realized that there were some places where one couldn't do well just because they were older or had a higher cultivation base. Back then he had thought that he could easily find a decent job as a Yu Yao. Who knew that no one would take him in after wandering the 10,000 Elephant Sea for so long? In the end, if Lu Yi hadn't asked him to work on the Matchless Island, he would probably have continued to wander the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Tang Jun finally understood. Although Lu Yi was young and had a low cultivation base, he was much more capable than Tang Jun. Later on he even figured out how to return to the Jade Conch Galaxy. He even went back personally to bring a group of people out. Tang Jun admitted that he was not as capable as Lu Yi. Without Lu Yi he could forget about ever seeing anyone from the Jade Conch Galaxy again. Therefore it was never wrong to follow him. Tang Jun's attitude surprised Wan Xiao. Old Tang was a Yu Yao, one of the only two Yu Yao in the three realms. Yet, he didn't seem to have any opinions of his own. However, when she thought about it carefully, she realized that her own pride and arrogance had been slowly eroded along the way. She claimed to be a late-stage Yu Yao, one of the strongest cultivators in the entire Jade Conch Galaxy. However, apart from her cultivation base, she didn't seem to have much to show in this place. She had wanted to take care of the cultivators of the three realms, but in the end, she was the one being taken care of. If it weren't for Lu Yi, the cultivators of the three realms would have been wiped out in the battle against the Blood Tribe outside the Indefinite Galaxy. She, a late-stage Yu Yao, would definitely not have survived. Unknowingly, she found that she was relying on this young man. Otherwise, she wouldn't have asked for his opinion. Logically speaking, she was the strongest cultivator in the three realms. She could make all the decisions with a single word. Thus, the matter of setting up the formation was decided. The three of them each sent out a message and summoned back some cultivators who were proficient in formations. Lu Yi and the two Yu Yao gathered together and studied it for half a day before finally deciding on the method to set up the formation. Because they didn't have enough money on hand, they didn't have many requirements for setting up the formation this time. As long as it could cover the entire desolate island, it would be fine. As for the strength of the formation, they didn't have to worry about that for now. No one would attack a desolate island like this anyway. It wouldn't be too late to slowly improve the formation once they had more money on hand. Tang Jun had done a lot of research on formations. His attainments in the Tao of formations were much higher than Lu Yi's. After all, he had lived for so long. Lu Yi's cultivation in the Tao of formations came mostly from the 100 Formation Pagoda in the 9 provinces. He was still at the Divine Sea realm. Several years ago, Tang Jun had been in charge of setting up the formation on Peerless Island. Now that he was doing it again, he was naturally familiar with the process. On the three realms side, all the cultivators who dabbled in the Tao of formations were summoned back. The entire desolate island was bustling with activity. Lu Yi didn't participate. He only made a few requests and left. Although he could learn a lot from participating in setting up the formation, he had other things to do at the moment. There was no problem with setting up the formation. In the future, the cultivators of the three realms would have a place to stay on the 10,000 Forms Sea. However, that alone wasn't enough. They had to have a source of spirit jades so that they wouldn't have to worry about their future cultivation. However, on the 10,000 Forms Sea, cultivators without a foundation who wanted to earn spirit jades could only go to Laika Island. Lu Yi didn't go to Laika Island. Instead he went to Peerless Island, which was now Tianyin Island. However, before that, Lu Yi saw an opportunity. He entered the 10,000 Forms Sea and set up the minor constellation hall below the desolate island. With the experience of turning Peerless Island into a spiritual island, Lu Yi had a rough understanding of the minor constellation hall's power. Therefore he only set up the place this time and didn't adjust the power of the minor constellation hall. This was because the desolate island occupied by the cultivators of the three realms was 3 times larger than Peerless Island. Thus, even if the power of the minor constellation hall was the same, the transformation speed of the desolate island was much slower than Peerless Island. It wasn't good to transform it too quickly. He didn't want to attract the attention of others and cause great waves. If he took his time, the cultivators of the three realms would have more time to familiarize themselves with the 10,000 Forms Sea. In the future, if there was a need, he could adjust the power of the minor constellation hall and make it stronger or weaker. After setting up the minor constellation hall and determining that it was hidden under the desolate island and wouldn't be touched by fish, Lu Yi went to Sky Spill Island. Compared to the last time he came, Sky Spill Island's popularity had increased. It was even more lively than the last time he came. Lu Yi followed his memories and arrived in front of a shop. He looked up and frowned. This was because the signboard of the shop had changed. It was no longer the Good Pill shop. Lu Yi walked in and found that it was actually a shop that sold magic tools. Without a doubt, Hua Qianying's shop had been taken back by Sky Spill Island and she had left. Lu Yi took out a sound talisman and tried to contact her, but he couldn't. After thinking for a moment, he left Sky Spill Island and flew in the direction of the Island of Versatility. Hua Qianying had set up a stall on the Island of Versatility to sell pills. Now that she had left Sky Spill Island, it was very likely that she had returned to the Island of Versatility. Lu Yi rushed to the Island of Versatility and went straight to the Island of Versatility. At the same time he used a sound talisman to contact Hua Qianying again. However, he still didn't find anything. He also couldn't find Hua Qianying in the Island of Versatility. This inevitably disappointed him. The reason why Lu Yi had recruited Hua Qianying from the Island of Versatility to the Island of Versatility was because of her alchemy skills. He wanted to form a good relationship with her so that when he brought his second senior sister and Hua Ci to the Island of Versatility one day, he could ask her for advice. Now that his second senior sister and Hua Ci had come, Hua Qianying was nowhere to be seen. If he had known this would happen, he would have mentioned this to Hua Qianying when he saw her a few days ago. However, at that time, Lu Yi was worried about the incident on the Island of Versatility and didn't have any other thoughts. He also didn't expect that in less than half a month, Hua Qianying would disappear. In the vast Island of Versatility, it was fine if he could contact the sound talisman, but if he couldn't, it would be very difficult to find someone. However, since he was already here, he couldn't return empty-handed. Lu Yi went to the Myriad Elephant Chamber of Commerce again and bought some things. He still had some spirit jades on hand. When he left the Island of Versatility, he still had 2 million spirit jades left. Last time, he had also received a few 100,000 spirit jades from Wuxia. He still had about 1 million spirit crystals, which he had obtained from the Mermaid clan and hadn't used yet. Spending a few 100,000 spirit jades wasn't a big deal to Lu Yi. When he returned to the Island of Versatility, Lu Yi found that the array here was basically set up. It was no different from what he had requested. Obviously, Lao Tang had strictly followed his instructions. Luoxia was also there talking to Luan Xiao and Tang Jun. The two Luan Xiao were extremely respectful. Seeing that Lu Yi had returned, Luoxia smiled slightly. "Young friend. Elder Luo." Lu Yi stepped forward and bowed. "You came back just in time. I'm leaving, so I came to say goodbye." Luoxia couldn't stay in the Island of Versatility for long. He had wandered around for a few days and enjoyed the supreme scenery here. Now that the time limit was up, he had to leave even if he didn't want to. If he forced himself to stay, he would only be besieged by the local sun. Chapter 1628. Although Luoxia was Rizhao, he could feel the difference between him and the other Rizhao cultivators. If he really got into a fight with the Wanxiang Galaxy, he wouldn't have a good ending. "Then I wish Elder Luo a safe journey," Lu Yi said. He was Rizhao, so he wouldn't encounter any problems on the way unless he decided to use the reincarnation tree's clone to pass through the Mist Dragon. Luoxia smiled. "Thank you for your kind words." After hesitating for a while, he couldn't help but say, "If you encounter any problems later, remember to look for Zhang Tingyi and Kang Cheng. They won't sit by and do nothing. This time, late-stage moon jade cultivators from the Four Directions galaxy came. Kang Cheng came from the Indefinite Galaxy, while Zhang Tingyi came from the Daluo Galaxy. Lu Yi had chatted with him before, but he wasn't too familiar with him. But just as Wuxia said, if Lu Yi encountered any problems and looked for them, they wouldn't leave him alone. The kindness of saving the world was not far away. Even the Rizhao cultivators said that they would never forget it. Wuxia saw that the situation here was a little bleak, so he specially reminded them. Although the Four Directions galaxy situation was similar to Lu Ye's for the time being, they didn't have a suitable place to stay. But the Four Directions galaxy's overall strength was strong. The four late-stage Moon Jade Realm cultivators were all late-stage Constellation Realm cultivators. Now that they had obtained many kindred spirit connection array discs, Kang Cheng and the others had been wandering around the myriad manifestation sea for the past few days, looking for suitable targets. Once they found one, they would attack the island. Then, occupying a spiritual island wouldn't be a big problem. If it weren't for the fact that there were too many people from the Four Directions galaxy, Wuxia would even ask Lu Yi and the others to join them. But there were 1,000 people from the Four Directions galaxy this time. Even if they occupied a spiritual island, they might not be able to find a place to stay, let alone Lu Yi and the others. It wasn't that they couldn't find a place to stay, but that there was a limit to the number of places a cultivator could cultivate on a spiritual island. The lower the quality of the spiritual island, the fewer places there would be. If they exceeded the quota, the efficiency of cultivating on the island would decrease. If they wanted to settle the 1,000 cultivators from the Four Directions galaxy, a low-quality spiritual island was definitely not enough. They had to at least conquer a mid-quality spiritual island. But mid-quality spiritual islands had powerful forces behind them. So Four Directions galaxy had to find a good target. It's not a big problem for now. If there are any difficulties, I won't be polite with them. Lu Yi nodded. That'll do. I'll be taking my leave. After Wuxia said those words, he soared into the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Even if he didn't want to be free and easy, he couldn't just stay here and not leave. After a while, Tang Jun came back to his senses and said, "Kid, now that the formation is set up, it's completely according to your request. However, the defensive strength of this thing is as weak as paper. Because the cost was very low, and the area covered by the formation was very large, the defensive power was indeed not worth mentioning. Any few constellations would be able to break through it with a flurry of attacks. Also, why do you want this array formation to have an isolation effect?" Tang Jun was a little suspicious. If the array formation had an isolation effect, then it could isolate the flow of energy inside and outside. But how could there be any energy flowing in from outside the Wanxiang Sea? As for isolating the internal energy from leaking out, it was even more of a joke. Such a deserted island did not have even the slightest bit of starry skies energy. Just in case. Lu Yi replied casually. What if? Wan Xiao was confused. What if this deserted island comes back to life one day? Tang Jun could not help but scoff. Occasionally, deserted islands would come back to life on the Wanxiang Sea, but it usually only happened once in many years. For example, the Peerless Island was the most successful example of a deserted island that came back to life. It was now a top-grade spiritual island. However, there was only one Peerless Island in this world. It was simply a pipe dream for a person to encounter such a good thing twice. It did not matter because setting up the formation itself did not cost much. Then what should we do next? Wan Xiao asked again. She realized that she was becoming less and less assertive. Thinking back to when she was in the Jade Conch sector, she was also a person who stood by her words. Now that she was in the Wanxiang Sea, she was relying on a young man who was not even a fraction of her age. The Earth Circle is finished. We should have a name. Lu Yi muttered, "We're from the Jade Conch sector, so let's call it Jade Conch Island." Wan Xiao was speechless. She did not know what Lu Yi was thinking. Why would he think of a name for the deserted island? Tang Jun looked indifferent. Jade Conch Island was Jade Conch Island, it was not Qingli Island? Let's call it the Three-World Island. Wan Xiao suggested, "The cultivators of the three worlds have established themselves here. We advance and retreat together, share honor and disgrace together. I hope that everyone will have a good future in the future." The main thing was that she felt a little guilty about calling it Jade Conch Island. Taoist Wan's suggestion is good. Let's call it the Three-World Island, Tang Jun agreed. The matter of the island's name was settled. Lu Yi said, Senior Sister Luan will be the great island master of the three-world island in the future. Old Tang, you will be the second island master. You're the third island master. Tang Jun looked at him. Lu Yi was about to say that there were more worthy candidates in this world, but on second thought, others were indeed more worthy. However, he was still the most suitable candidate. Among the people from the 9 prefectures, there were people from the Haotian Alliance and the Myriad Demons Ridge. Although their cultivation had reached such a level that they had long abandoned the division of factions, there was still such a mark left behind. No matter who became the third island master, it would be difficult to convince the masses. Only he could be the third island master without any objections. Moreover, his cultivation was indeed the highest in the 9 prefectures. Next, we'll build the foundation of the three-world island. Lu Yi spoke and looked at Tang Jun. Old Tang, you have experience in this area. You'll be in charge. We'll follow the previous plan of the Matchless Island. Tang Jun had a strange expression. Follow the plan of the Matchless Island? The Matchless Island was built into a commercial spiritual island by Chu Shen. Only a part of it was the foundation of the island. Most of the spiritual island was a place to set up shops. Tang Jun really wanted to open Lu Ye's brain to see what he was thinking about for such a deserted island according to the previous plan of the Matchless Island. Young man, you're not really expecting this lousy island to be revived, are you? Everyone has to have dreams. What if one day you're lucky enough to realize them? Lu Yi said earnestly. Tang Jun snorted. If the three-world island can be revived, I can even call you Grandpa. Lu Yi looked at him leisurely. He extended his hand and passed a storage ring to Tang Jun. Take the things inside. They should be useful. Tang Jun took the ring suspiciously. He scanned it with his divine perception and his expression became serious. Young man, don't worry. I've always listened to you. I'll do whatever you say. Wan Xiao looked at Tang Jun in shock. She didn't know what Lu Yi had given him to change Tang Jun's attitude so drastically. Lu Yi walked towards a place not far away. After he left, Tang Jun happily took out a few things from his storage ring. Wan Xiao fixed her eyes on them and discovered that they were actually a few magic treasures. She couldn't help but sigh. Fellow Taoist Tang, be careful. You're already so old. How can you be so shameless in front of a young man? Tang Jun said, you have a big family in the Jade Conch domain. How would you know the hardships of a small domain like ours? Back then, Lu Yi had given him a few 100,000 spiritual jade pieces to buy Dharma treasures so that he could have some money. However, after the battle on the Matchless Island, the Dharma treasures that he had spent a few 100,000 spiritual jade pieces to buy were all destroyed. Now he had nothing but cultivation. As a spell cultivator, how could he survive without Dharma treasures? Unfortunately, he was short on money and couldn't afford to buy them. Lu Yi had obviously learned about this from Chu Shen, which was why he had given him these Dharma treasures. These Dharma treasures came from Wuxia. On the way to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, Wuxia had bought some kindred spirit connection formation discs from Lu Yi and paid a few 100,000 spiritual jade pieces and these Dharma treasures. Lu Yi had planned to sell them to Tang Jun, but after learning that all his Dharma treasures had been destroyed, he gave them to him. These Dharma treasures weren't of high grades. They were things that Wuxia didn't use and didn't care for. However, they were perfect for Tang Jun. Lu Yi was about to find Hua Ci and second senior sister when he was stopped by Wu Chang, Yu Ji and the others. What's the matter? Lu Yi asked. The few of them looked at each other. Their gazes were flying but no one said a word. It wasn't until Jianghu drew his sword and pressed it against Wu Chang's waist that Wu Chang said, I heard that you can fish on the 10,000 Elephant Sea. One fish can be sold for several thousand spiritual jade pieces. Is that true? Not only was Luan Xiao worried about the future of the spiritual jade cultivation of the cultivators of the three realms, but they themselves were also worried. Although the Four Directions Galaxy had given Lu Yi 10 million spiritual jade pieces as a thank you gift to the cultivators of the 9 states and each of them had received several thousand spiritual jade pieces, so there was no need to worry about their cultivation in the short term. However, they couldn't just sit around and eat. Moreover, cultivators didn't just spend spiritual jade on cultivation. Ever since they came to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, they discovered that there were many good things here. They wanted to buy all of them but they couldn't afford anything. Naturally, they wanted to find a way to make money. They didn't know why, but when they heard about fishing, they were immediately tempted. Lu Yi frowned. He had only told the people of the Four Directions Galaxy about fishing in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. He had never mentioned it to the cultivators of the 9 states, so he didn't know how they heard about it. When Wu Chang asked, he could only nod. That's right. Then we Wu Chang's face lit up. You can't go. Lu Yi immediately stopped Wu Chang from getting tempted. There's too much luck involved in this matter. Many people have lost their family fortunes because of it. Those who benefit from it are only a small part of it, and it's only a very small part. Fishing could ruin one's life, and playing with fish for 3 generations wasn't just a saying. It was the conclusion of countless ancestors' tragic endings. Just like gambling? Wu Chang didn't understand. It's not the same. In any case, this matter isn't reliable. No matter what you've heard from others, don't get involved in this matter. Otherwise it'll be too late to regret it. They all nodded. Lu Yi didn't know if they listened to him or not. Lu Yi saw that this wouldn't do. If Wu Chang and the others were so interested in fishing after hearing about this matter, the others would probably be the same. Especially now that the cultivators of the 3 realms didn't have any spiritual jade income, there might be people who would take the risk out of desperation. He had to get Luan Xiao to pass down the order that the cultivators of the 3 realms island were strictly prohibited from fishing in the future. He had to nip this idea in the bud. Chapter 1629. Since coming to the Wanxiang Sea, most people had gone on a trip together. Although they did not gain much, it was always good to broaden their horizons. There were a small number of people who did not leave this deserted island. Shuiyuan and Hua Xi had been staying here all this time. When Lu Yi walked over, the 2 girls were gathered together and talking about something. Hu Po was lazily lying on the side. Ye sat beside Hu Po, her hand supporting her chin. She had a thoughtful expression on her face. Yi was nowhere to be seen. She did not run out, but hid inside Hu Po's body. She was a spirit after all, an existence of the same nature as the soul race. So in this place where people came and went, it was not convenient for her to appear for long. When Lu Yi came here, Li Shang also flashed out of his divine sense ocean and entered Hu Po's body. He should have gone to chat with Yi. Seeing Yaya's expression, Lu Yi was a little surprised. He bent down and raised his hand to touch her head. What's wrong? Yaya looked up at him and pouted. Auntie said not to let people touch my head. I won't grow up. The auntie she was talking about was undoubtedly Yi. Lu Ye's hand stiffened and he awkwardly withdrew it. Looking at Yaya seriously for a while, Lu Yi vaguely felt that Yaya seemed to have changed recently. Yaya was really like a child before, but now her eyes seemed to have become more lively. What's bothering you? Lu Yi felt that he should talk to Yaya. Yaya nodded, feeling wronged. Do you want to tell me? Lu Yi asked. Yaya hesitated for a moment, then said, Daddy, I've been having some strange dreams recently. Lu Yi waited for her to continue, but Yaya did not say anything after that, so he could only ask, What dreams? Yaya shook her head, indicating that she could not explain it clearly, but those dreams were indeed strange and scary. She did not dare to sleep recently. Only then did Lu Yi understand why the little girl was sitting here in deep thought with a melancholy look. She was obviously traumatized. Otherwise, like before, she would easily fall asleep next to Hu Po. When did it start? Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. Yaya said, It was a few days ago. What was a few days ago? Lu Yi found that it was quite troublesome to communicate with children. Although Yaya was certainly not a real child, her temperament and mind were no different from a child's. Before we came here? Lu Yi asked. Yaya tilted her head and thought for a moment, then nodded, indicating that he was right. Lu Yi looked at the bracelet on her wrist. After you found this bracelet? Yaya nodded again. Lu Yi pondered for a while and vaguely realized that the bracelet found in the mist dragon should be the reason for Yaya's dreams. This thing must have originally belonged to Yaya, but it was lost in the mist dragon. The last time Yaya passed by it, she sensed it and found it again, gathering a pair. Since it was something that belonged to her, it shouldn't be bad for her. Let me have a look. Lu Yi stretched out his hand. He hadn't checked Yaya's bracelet before. Yaya then took off the 2 bracelets on her wrist and handed them to Lu Yi. Lu Yi took them and examined them carefully, but could not find anything wrong with them. He couldn't even tell if this thing was a treasure or not. For such a situation to occur, either this thing was really not a treasure, or the mystery of this thing was beyond his understanding. Lu Yi leaned toward the latter possibility. No matter what, Yaya was still sunshine, and it was normal for her to have some mysterious treasures on her. Handing the bracelet to Yaya, Lu Yi comforted her. It's just a dream. Don't be afraid, everyone dreams. Yaya looked at him innocently. Daddy's dreams are also scary? Lu Yi thought to himself that he hadn't really slept for a long time, so how could he dream? But he could only lie to a child. It's very scary, but you'll be fine when you wake up. Yaya seemed to understand. So everything in the dream is fake. Of course it's fake. Lu Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Yaya cheered as if Lu Yi had solved a big problem for her. She was so happy that she jumped up and hugged Lu Yi's face and kissed him. Lu Yi froze. Shuiyuan and Hua Xi, who were talking and laughing on the side, stared at this scene in a daze. Yaya ran off to the side with Hupa to play. Lu Yi touched his face that had been kissed and couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. Other than Hua Xi, this was the second, the third, the fourth person of the opposite sex to kiss him. Even Yi had never kissed him. Hua Xi said faintly, "You'd better pray that Yaya stays like this." Everyone knew that Yaya was sunshine and for some reason she had become like this. But there was no guarantee that she would ever recover. If there really was a day when she recalled that she had always called Lu Yi daddy and kissed him like this, who knew if she would crush him to death with one hand? Lu Yi felt a lot of pressure. It seemed that he had to quickly improve his cultivation. At the very least, he had to ensure that if Yaya recovered and wanted to teach him a lesson, he had to be able to protect himself. "What's the matter?" Shuiyuan changed the topic. Only then did Lu Yi remember the purpose of his visit. He hurriedly handed over a storage ring. "I bought some pill recipes from the Vientiane Chamber of Commerce, as well as many herbs. You can study them and see if you can refine some pills. At present, if the cultivators of the three realms wanted to earn money, they could only do it through alchemy, other than going to Laika Island to work as laborers. This was also the method that many alchemists chose after coming to the Vientiane Sea. As long as their alchemy skills were high enough, they could always earn some money. Take Hua Qianying for example, as long as she lowered her requirements slightly, she could join a top force. She would definitely receive good offerings and treatment. Shuiyuan and Hua Xi's alchemy skills were definitely top-notch in the 9 provinces, but they were not enough on the Vientiane Sea. After all, there were many pill recipes that they had not dabbled in, and many herbs that they did not recognize. However, Lu Yi did not count on them to refine pills. He was counting on a treasure in Shuiyuan's hands. After he obtained the treasure, he gave it to Shuiyuan for safekeeping. It was a supreme treasure that could assist in alchemy. With this treasure, as long as one had the materials for alchemy and a suitable pill formula, one could naturally refine spirit pills. Moreover, the quality of the spirit pills would be extremely outstanding. This treasure could definitely become the key to earning spiritual jades for the cultivators of the 3 realms. Shuiyuan took the storage ring and immediately understood Lu Ye's plan. "Junior sister Hua and I will study it first. And these things you guys take them too." Lu Yi handed over another storage ring. The ring did not contain things that he had bought, but things that he had obtained from the Vientiane Sea. For example, the spirit refining grass and many types of spirit fish and star beasts. These things had been with him for a long time. Although he had eaten some spirit fish when he returned to the 9 provinces, he had stored a lot of them, so he naturally did not finish them. Especially spirit fish, which were inexhaustible in the Vientiane Sea. Others could not obtain them, but with Lu Ye's relationship with the mermaid clan, he could easily obtain them. Whether it was by ling or other spirit fish, they all had great medicinal value. If Shuiyuan and Hua Xi could develop pills that used spirit fish as the main ingredient, it would be equivalent to finding a source of income for the 3 Realms Island. As for the spirit refining grass, its value was naturally high. However, Lu Yi had a lot of it and could not use it all. It was a good choice to use it for alchemy. After all, it was not good to sell the spirit refining grass in large quantities to avoid being targeted. However, if it was refined into pills, there would be no such concern. It was the same principle as the spirit fish. Even if Lu Yi knew that those spirit fish could be sold for a good price, it was not good to sell them directly. If people asked about the origin, he would not be able to explain. He could not say that he had killed them in the Vientiane Sea. After receiving many pill recipes and materials from Lu Yi, Shuiyuan and Hua Xi became busy. The 2 women had nothing to do since they arrived here. They were so bored that they were about to grow mold. However, as female cultivators, especially beautiful ones with low cultivation levels, it was not good for them to go out. Now that they finally had something to do, they naturally devoted themselves to it. The 3 Realms Island was in full swing. Under Tang Jun's leadership, the construction of the island's foundation was in full swing. For cultivators, this was a very simple matter. It was nothing more than building some residences. However, compared to mortals, the residences built by cultivators were undoubtedly more durable and beautiful. There was no need to worry about materials. Lu Yi had already gone to the Vientiane Chamber of Commerce to buy some. With his previous experience on the Matchless Island, Tang Jun could be said to be very familiar with this task. The buildings were arranged reasonably under his design. In just a few days, the foundation of the three-world island was more or less completed. The few hundred cultivators finally had a place to stay. Lu Yi put in a lot of effort and carefully supervised the entire process. The current Three Realms Island had changed a lot compared to before. However, aside from the foundation of the island, the rest of the island was still desolate. Lu Yi had Tang Jun lead the team to continue the construction. Tang Jun was a bit surprised because in his opinion, Lu Yi was really treating this desolate island as the future base of the Three Realms. The current buildings were enough for now. If they continued to build more, it was clearly for the cultivators of the Three Realms to come in the future. However, after receiving Lu Ye's magical weapons, Tang Jun had no choice but to let Lu Yi do as he pleased. Just as Lu Yi was about to leave, a figure suddenly flew to the Three Realms Island and stopped outside the Great Formation. When Wan Xiao saw who it was, she opened the formation and the person immediately flew in. Fellow Taoist Kong. Wan Xiao greeted. It was Kong Cheng of the Indefinite Realm. After entering the Vientiane Sea, the cultivators of the Three Realms were separated from the people of the Four Directions Galaxy. This was the first time they had come here. Lu Yi and Tang Jun, who were talking, also walked over and exchanged greetings with Kong Cheng. Lu Yi did not know why Kong Cheng had come here. According to what he knew, the people of the Four Directions Galaxy had been searching for suitable targets on the Vientiane Sea. However, Lu Yi soon understood why Kong Cheng had come here. Chapter 1630. Borrow people? Lu Yi was slightly taken aback, but he quickly recovered. Do you already have a target in mind? It had been more than half a month since they arrived at the 10,000 Elephant Sea. After such a long time, the Four Directions Galaxy had obviously found a suitable target and were ready to attack. Kong Cheng nodded. Yes, that's why we're preparing to attack that spiritual island. In order to prevent a lack of manpower, we hope that you can provide us with some assistance. Of course, we won't ask for your help for nothing. Lu Yi pondered for a moment. The Three Realms cultivators and the Four Directions Galaxy's cultivators had come together. Furthermore, if the Three Realms cultivators wanted to come to the 10,000 Elephant Sea in the future, they would have to pass through Wu Ding's territory. It was not a big deal for Kong Cheng to come and borrow people. After thinking for a moment, Lu Yi said, "Which middle-class spiritual island are you planning to attack?" Kong Cheng smiled and said, "Let's not touch the middle-grade spiritual islands for now. Although it hasn't been long, we have discovered that many spiritual islands are closely related to each other, especially those middle-grade spiritual islands. Most of them have their own allies. Before we have the confidence to secure a middle-grade spiritual island, we are prepared to test the waters with a low-grade spiritual island." If Kong Cheng wanted to borrow people, he would not be borrowing constellations but Yu Yao. Due to the rules of the 10,000 Elephant Sea, no faction could have more than 5 Yu Yao participating in the battle. The Four Directions Galaxy had 4 late-stage Yu Yao, so there was still 1 spot left. If they borrowed 1 more, they would have 5. However, with the Four Directions Galaxy's overall strength, they could easily take down a low-class spiritual island. There was no need for them to come here and borrow people. They were not borrowing people, they were giving them benefits. Kong Cheng continued, "Low-class spiritual islands are not what we're after. If there's a chance in the future, we'll attack a middle-class spiritual island. When that time comes, you can take care of that low-class spiritual island." This was a great benefit. With the Three Realms cultivators' resources, it was already good enough to have a low-class spiritual island. There were so many factions on the 10,000 Elephant Sea, but how many of them had their own spiritual islands? Even the lowest class spiritual island was better than a deserted island like the Three Realms Island. This was because cultivators could save a lot of spiritual jades if they cultivated there. The Four Directions Galaxy's decision was obviously because of Lu Yi. Perhaps Wuxia had told them something before they left, or perhaps it was their own intention. Wan Xiao clearly saw this and didn't say anything. She just looked at Lu Yi waiting for him to decide. Lu Yi pondered for a moment, then said, "Fellow Taoist Kong, I appreciate your kind intentions, but the Three Realms cannot compare to your tribe. Even if we do occupy that low-class spiritual island in the future, with our current foundation, we may not be able to defend it." Kong Cheng said, "We can help." 1,000 directions. However, it wasn't good to say this out loud. We were the ones who didn't think it through. Kong Cheng understood what Lu Yi meant. Still, thank you for your kind intentions. It's my duty. Without you, there would be no Four Directions Galaxy today. Senior brother Luo reminded us before he left that if the three realms needed any help, we must not refuse. If we need help in the future, we must remember to send a message. Kang Cheng deliberately mentioned sending a message to express his attitude. In the future, the Four Directions Galaxy's cultivators would not have any contact with the three realms on the surface. Otherwise, the three realms would be implicated. Kang Cheng left quickly. Lu Yi sent them off with his eyes. Although the four cardinal galaxies had good intentions this time, and if he did not have the minor constellation palace, he might have been able to accept it. However, since he already had the minor constellation palace, why would he care about a mere low-grade spiritual island? It was just that he did not want to be too obvious about it. Otherwise, if he adjusted the power of the minor constellation palace slightly, he would be able to turn the three-realm island into a low-grade spiritual island in less than 10 days. Kang Cheng thought that Lu Yi was afraid that the three realms would be implicated, but he did not think so. In the future, the three realms island would definitely become a living island. When that time came, it would definitely be targeted. When the three realms island became a superior spiritual island, or even a top-grade spiritual island, it was hard to say who would be implicated. After exhorting Wan Xiaowa and Tang Jun, Lu Yi turned and walked towards his sleeping quarters. The sleeping quarters he was given were in the best area of the Three Realms Island. It was not small, but there were only 3 sleeping quarters. They belonged to the 3 island lords. Lu Ye's residence was in the middle, and his sleeping quarters were not small. All kinds of side rooms were available, not to mention him. Even if dozens of people were to live in them, it would not be a problem. He found a room and walked in. He picked up his conch and blew into it. Looking at the time, it was time to make the appointment with Miao Yen. Although he had confirmed that the conch's mark could be placed on the frost jade board, whether this method would work or not, he still needed to verify it. It would be best if it worked. That way it would be convenient for him to go to the minor constellation hall in the future. The conch's sound rang out. The door opened and Lu Yi walked in. When he passed through the door, Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. He was no longer in front of the familiar conch hall. Instead, he was in a vacuum. He turned around and saw the simple minor constellation hall in front of him. Miao Yen and a few other mermaids were waiting at the side. Bai Lu was among them. Aside from her and Miao Yen, there were 2 other mermaids, 1 male and 1 female. They were probably preparing to advance Yu Yao. At this moment, the frost jade board was placed in front of Miao Yen. The door was on the board. This vacuum wasn't Miao Yan's doing. Instead, it was the power of a golden conch. Bai Lu was holding the conch in her hand. Specks of golden light rippled from the conch, pushing away the seawater and turning the area around them into a vacuum. The mermaids were quite thoughtful. If it weren't for the conch's power, the frost jade board would have been corroded by the 10,000 elephant seawater. At that time, it would be hard to say whether the conch's mark Lu Yi had left on it would still exist. After everyone greeted Lu Yi, Miao Yen said, "Thank you for your trouble, young friend." Lu Yi nodded. Without wasting any time, he walked to the minor constellation hall and reached out to push the door. The other mermaids watched curiously. Before Lu Yi came, they had already tried. However, even someone as strong as Miao Yen couldn't budge the minor constellation hall's door. Right now, under their watchful eyes, Lu Yi didn't seem to be using much strength at all. He actually managed to push the door open. Miao Yan's eyes lit up. He immediately understood that Lu Yi had indeed been chosen by the minor constellation hall. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to open the door so casually. Since that was the case, the ancestral teachings were correct. Those who were chosen by the minor constellation hall definitely had the ability to remove the curse on their mermaids. When the door was pushed open, everyone rushed in. After everyone had entered, Lu Yi walked in as well. Speaking of which, it was strange. The door was on the frost jade board. When Miao Yen walked in with the board, the door on the board followed him in as well. Lu Yi had thought that the door would remain outside. Aside from Bai Lu, this was the first time the other 3 mermaids had entered the minor constellation hall. Naturally, they looked around curiously. Unfortunately, there was nothing else in the minor constellation hall apart from a simple stone tablet in the center. Naturally, they couldn't see anything new. Great Elder, it's rumored that the minor constellation hall is extremely helpful in helping cultivators break through to the Yu Yao stage. However, I don't know the specifics. The princess and the others will have to figure this out themselves, Lu Yi said. Bai Lu smiled. I've already learned about it from Yu Ling. Naturally, I know what to do. Don't worry. Lu Yi was stunned. He had forgotten about Yu Ling. Although the minor constellation hall she had entered was only a projection, it was likely that she had some of the minor constellation hall's miraculous effects. Bai Lu had learned about the situation from her in advance, so it was naturally for the best. Miao Yan said, "Young friend, if you have something to do you can leave. You can come back later to escort them out. I'll stay behind to protect them." Lu Yi didn't have anything to do. However, the door had a time limit, so it wasn't appropriate for him to stay behind. "Then I wish you all the best. The next time we meet you'll already be Yu Yao." Lu Yi gave them his blessings, then set a time with Miao Yan for their next visit. Then he left through the door. He really wanted to see how the minor constellation halls would break through to the Yu Yao stage. Such a close observation was rare. He was already in the late stage of the minor constellation hall, so he would have to experience this sooner or later. There was no harm in observing and learning. By the time Lu Yi returned, only a few minutes had passed. The cultivators of the three realms hadn't even noticed his departure. The change in Peerless Island had alerted him. When he was still here, Peerless Island's foundation was actually very weak. This was because Tang Jun was the only Yu Yao there. If it weren't for Chu Xin's background, which attracted so many forces, Peerless Island would have been conquered long ago. However, Peerless Island later became a top-grade spiritual island, and Chu Xin's background was no longer of any use. Now, the Three Realms Island had 2 Yu Yao and almost 500 minor constellations. However, such a force was really nothing in the Wanxiang Sea. It would be fine if the Three Realms Island became a low-grade spiritual island in the future. However, if it became a mid-grade spiritual island, this force would be insufficient. Relying on the people from the Four Directions Galaxy was unreliable. If they wanted to stir up trouble, they would definitely offend others. At the same time, relying on them would also attract the attention of their enemies. Therefore, Peerless Island still needed allies. Disregarding the minor constellations, the number of Yu Yao was still too few. However, where could they find allies in a place like this? Lu Yi thought about it and could only think of one direction. The Mermaid clan was the most natural ally. For example, Miao Yan was close to the peak of the late-stage Yu Yao stage. She was not inferior to Wan Xiao at all. If she could help at a critical moment, then the safety of the Three Realms Island would be assured. Meanwhile, the Mermaid clan had many Yu Yao. The elders were all at the late-stage Yu Yao stage. This clan's biggest problem was that they didn't have Rizhao. Unfortunately, the Mermaid clan couldn't leave the Wanxiang Sea because of the curse. In the end, they couldn't be relied on. Chapter 1631. Lu Yi planned to go on a long journey. First, he had to send Li Shang back to the Soul Tribe's ancestral land. This was something he had discussed long ago. Second, the reincarnation tree had instructed him to go to the Yin-Yang Great Millstone before advancing to Yu Yao. Although Lu Yi did not know the deeper meaning behind it, since it was Old Tree's instruction, it would not harm him. The reincarnation tree had existed for too long. It obviously knew some secrets that ordinary cultivators did not know. The Yin-Yang Great Millstone would most likely be beneficial to Lu Ye's advancement. However, this was all based on the temporary stability of the Three-World Island. It would be irresponsible of him to leave now. Therefore Lu Yi could not leave now. At least he had to wait for a while. However, the minor constellation palace had already been installed under the Three-World Island. It would definitely be revived. Once it became a mid-level spiritual island, it would definitely be targeted. When that time came, they might not be able to defend themselves. Unfortunately, he could not count on the Mermaid clan. Otherwise they would be the best ally. Lu Yi could not help but feel regretful. How good would it be if the Mermaid clan under the 10,000 Elephant Sea did not have that curse? However, if they did not have that curse, the Mermaid clan would not have lived under the 10,000 Elephant Sea for eternity. Lu Yi would not have had the chance to meet them. Wait? A thought suddenly flashed through Lu Ye's mind. He thought about it carefully. The Mermaid clan could not leave the 10,000 Elephant Sea because of the curse passed down through generations. That curse was an inheritance of their bloodline. If that was the case, would the talent tree work? Lu Yi had never thought about this before. Moreover, when he met the Mermaid clan, the talent tree had only undergone 2 transformations. It could not be used on others. But now the talent tree had already changed 3 times. He could even help resolve the power of Dancer that invaded other people's bodies. That so-called curse was nothing more than a kind of external corrosive power, so the talent tree might be able to burn it down. If that was the case, then he could definitely help the Mermaid clan neutralize the power of the curse. Then they would be able to leave the 10,000 Elephant Sea and live. If the Mermaid clan could leave the 10,000 Elephant Sea, then when the Three-World Island was attacked they could come and help. Wouldn't that be impregnable? The more Lu Yi thought about it, the more he felt that it was a good idea. Unfortunately, he hadn't thought of it before. If he had, he could have given it a try. Anyway, there wasn't much loss in trying. If it worked, then the problem that troubled him would be solved. Even if it didn't work, there wasn't much loss. It was just that the mere people who acted as the test subject would most likely suffer some damage. Previously, he and Miao Yan had agreed to go to the Constellation Hall half a month later to bring Bai Lu and the others out. Therefore, he could only try again half a month later. Lu Yi recalled some of the things that Bai Lu had said when he chatted with her. She said that the reason why the mere people were so friendly to him, that they would grant almost all of his requests, was entirely because of an ancestral teaching. One of their ancestral teachings was that those who could gain the favor of the temple would be the future of this branch of the mere people, and could help them solve the problem of the curse. At that time, Lu Yi was a little disdainful because he didn't know how to deal with the so-called curse. Who would have thought that at this time he would have a clue? From the looks of it, the mere folk ancestors who passed down the ancestral teachings seemed to have something up their sleeves. As for whether it would work or not, he could only try it himself the next time he went there. Lu Yi secretly made up his mind. However, what he needed to do now was to quickly improve his own foundation. Although it had been a few years since he advanced to the late stage of the Constellation Hall, and the efficiency of his intermittent cultivation was not bad, it was still not as good as cultivating in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. He had to improve his foundation to the peak of the Constellation Hall before he set off for the Yin-Yang Great Millstone. There was not much time left, so Lu Yi did not dare to delay. Leaving his clone to take care of this place, his main body quietly left the three-world island, found a secluded place, and plunged into the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Cultivate, cultivate. Entering the sea as usual, there was no need to guide and refine it at all. The enormous energy in the sea frantically corroded his body. Lu Yi did not need to do too much. He had the talent tree to burn the impurities that invaded his body. For a moment, the talent tree lit up brightly and a gray mist rose. This kind of cultivation method was more suitable for him. The only drawback was that it consumed too much energy. Fortunately, he still had some fuel left from the talent tree he had stored in the past. It would not be a problem for him to advance to the peak of the Constellation Hall. However, even if it was not enough, he still had 2 million spirit jades on hand. He could buy some when the time came. He still had to think of a way to earn money. In the future, he would need to use the talent tree. Without spirit jades, where would he go to buy fire-type treasures? Speaking of treasures, Lu Ye's heart stirred. He suddenly thought of a treasure. Back then, on the way back to the 9 provinces with Li Shang, he used the bone sun to lure a group of armored armadillo beasts. After killing them, he obtained a treasure coin from one of the armored armadillo beasts. After a few tests, he verified the treasure coin's miraculous power. It could absorb the energy of the stars and store it inside. Then, when needed, it could be transformed into a mystic ray and shot out. Back then, the armored armadillo beast had spat out a ray of copper light, which had almost killed Lu Yi. Later, Lu Yi had placed it in his storage ring. In the end, he had lost several million spirit jades, and the treasure coin had turned silver. On the Heavenly Dog planet, he had used this treasure coin to kill a moon jade star beast in one fell swoop. Killing a moon jade at the cost of several million spirit jades was undoubtedly a great loss. So, after that, Lu Yi had placed the treasure coin in a storage ring that did not have any spirit jades. He did not want it to cause him any losses for no reason. Lu Yi had once wondered if this thing could absorb enough spirit jades, would it pose a threat to the masters of the Sunshine Realm? However, he had not dared to try it, mainly because he did not have the capital to do so. But now, looking at his surroundings, he was surrounded by seawater formed from the energy of the stars. Strictly speaking, the seawater of the 10,000 Elephant Sea was no different from spirit jades. It was just that it was too corrosive and had too many impurities, so no one dared to go deep into it to absorb and refine it. But the treasure coin did not care about impurities. Perhaps it could absorb seawater? Thinking of this, Lu Yi could not help but take out the treasure coin. The moment the treasure coin appeared, Lu Ye's expression changed. Just as he had guessed, the treasure coin was madly absorbing the seawater around it. It was like a ferocious beast that had been starved for countless years. Its entire body had turned into a bottomless pit, and its speed of absorption was beyond imagination. Where the treasure coin was, there were obvious signs of the seawater rapidly flowing. After the treasure coin had shot out that ray of silver light, it had become dim, but now, it had quickly turned into a copper color. As the seawater continued to absorb the treasure coin, the copper color became brighter and brighter. After a while, it suddenly turned silver. Lu Yi could not help but smile with exultation. Last time when the treasure coin turned silver, he had lost a few million spirit jades. Now, after absorbing the seawater of the 10,000 Elephant Sea, it had reached the same level. This made Lu Yi feel as if he had picked up a few million spirit jades for free. He had profited greatly. Moreover, this was not the end of it. The silver color quickly surpassed the level of the treasure coin. After a while, Lu Yi actually noticed traces of gold at the edge of the treasure coin. It was as if the entire treasure coin was inlaid with gold. His heart was beating rapidly. It seemed that it was just as he had guessed. This treasure coin turning silver was not the end, and it had even greater potential. The gold edge rapidly spread towards the center. In just a short period of a dozen breaths, a dazzling gold treasure coin was imprinted in Lu Ye's eyes. At first glance, this treasure coin was bright orange as if it was made of the purest gold. If one did not see it with one's own eyes, it would be very difficult to believe that its true appearance was dim and lusterless. The signs of the seawater's absorption had stopped. Lu Yi held the golden treasure coin with a solemn expression. This was because he sensed a terrifying power hidden within the coin. It was many times stronger than what Lu Yi had sensed when the coin had turned silver all those years ago. This thing, could it be a threat to Rizhao? Lu Yi was not sure, but there was a high probability that it could. This kind of thing could only be known after trying once, but there was no way to test it. He could not ask Rizhao to come here. Rizhao, who was stationed on the 10,000 Elephant Sea, was from this galaxy. If he really invited them here, he might not be able to keep this treasure coin. Now, it seemed that this treasure turning gold was the limit because Lu Yi did not feel any signs of the treasure coin devouring seawater anymore. Even so, this was still inconceivable. This thing should be considered a rare treasure. As for its grade, Lu Yi felt that ordinary grades could not determine this treasure's grade. It was very likely to be related to something at the level of a starry sky treasure. In other words, it was either a starry sky treasure or a starry sky treasure similar to the sword gourd. With such a precious treasure in hand, Lu Yi wanted to find a suitable target to test its power. Unfortunately, there was no chance, so he could only restrain himself. When he left the 10,000 Elephant Sea, he could give this treasure to Wuxia and use it as a trump card for the three-world island. As for himself, he still had the red talisman given to him by Su Yuqing, so it was not a big problem. After so many years of nourishment, his strength had increased by quite a bit. The power that the red talisman could unleash was not something that Yu Yao could withstand. When he advanced to Yu Yao, he could use the red talisman to threaten Rizhao. He reluctantly put away the treasure coin and continued cultivating. However, cultivating like this was a bit boring. Lu Yi thought for a moment, then took out the Panshan saber. When he cultivated here before, he never dared to take out the Panshan saber because ordinary spirit treasures could not withstand the seawater's corrosion. However, the Panshan saber was transformed from pyrolite, so it could probably withstand the seawater's corrosive power. Even so, Lu Yi paid close attention to the Panshan saber's changes. If he felt anything wrong, he would immediately put it away. Fortunately, he was right. Pyrolite was an ancient soldier after all. The Panshan saber that it had transformed into was not an ordinary treasure. The powerful corrosion of the 10,000 Elephant Sea's water had no effect on it. This was good. Lu Yi did not need to worry about his cultivation. The talent tree would burn away the impurities that had invaded his body, and his foundation would rapidly strengthen. He could take advantage of this opportunity to continue tempering himself in the Green Hall. With this two-pronged approach, how efficient would his cultivation be? Chapter 1632. Time passed. Lu Yi immersed his mind in the Green Hall again and again. He was killed by the human monarch Xiao again and again. Every time he was killed, he would think for a while before entering the hall to observe and learn from his mistakes. None of the ancestors who left their inheritances in Ho were simple characters. Every one of them had their own unique skills. Even Qing Ho of the insect clan had a secret technique like the dual blade technique. The power of the human monarch Xiao's blade was too strong. Even though Lu Yi had seen it many times and had been on guard the moment he entered the Green Hall, he could not defend himself at all. However, being killed countless times was not without effect. Compared to the beginning, Lu Yi now had some time to react. In the beginning, he was killed before he could even see what was going on. As long as he had time to react, it would not be a big problem. Sooner or later, he would be able to see through Monarch Xiao's blade and deal with it. Lu Yi originally planned to cultivate under the Wanxiang Sea for half a month before going to the Constellation Hall to pick up Bai Lu and the others. However, less than 10 days later, there was some movement on the clone's side. Wuxia and Shui Yuan went to find the clone left behind on Three World Island and showed him something. In the sleeping quarters on Three World Island, the clone looked at a row of jade bottles in front of him. There was a spirit pill in front of each bottle for display. Wuxia and Shui Yuan stood at the side and looked at him. Although there were several jade bottles, the avatar could tell at a glance that there were actually two types of spirit pills here. It was just that the quality of each pill was different. Try it. Shui Yuan gestured to the clone. The clone did not stand on ceremony. He took the spirit pill in front of the leftmost jade bottle and stuffed it into his mouth. As soon as the spirit pill entered his mouth, it turned into a warm current that flowed into his mind. The clone felt that his soul sea was being nourished. A spirit pill that targets the spirit? The clone did not know much about spirit pills, but how could he not realize the miraculous effects of this spirit pill when he personally examined it? This was clearly a spirit pill that targeted the spirit. There were many types of spirit pills in this world. They could be used for cultivation, recovery, healing, strengthening one's foundation, or other purposes. However, no matter where it was, there was only one type of spirit pill that was the most valuable, and that was the spirit pill that was effective for the spirit. It was not because of the refining technique, but because of the high price of the raw materials. No matter where it was, the raw materials for this type of spirit pill were relatively rare, so the price had always been high. Taste it again? Shui Yuan looked at him with a smile. The clone did not need to taste it. He said, "A supreme-grade spirit pill?" This was because he could feel that there were no impurities within the pill. In other words, if a cultivator consumed a pill like this, there would be no hidden dangers to their body. In fact, it couldn't be said to be a top-grade spirit pill because even if it was a top-grade spirit pill made by an alchemist, there would still be some impurities inside, but those impurities were so small that they could be ignored. However, the pill that his clone had swallowed did not contain any impurities at all. If he really had to rank it, it should be above supreme grade. Unfortunately, there was no such classification in the world. There was no doubt that this spirit pill came from the pill gourd. Otherwise, given Shui Yuan and Hua Xi's pill refining skills, how could they have such results in such a short period of time? Lu Yi had snatched the pill gourd from the alpha origin stage and had finally understood its use. He felt that he had no use for it, so he had given it to Shui Yuan for safekeeping. In the years that Lu Yi was not in the 9 provinces, Shui Yuan had refined many top-grade spirit pills with the pill gourd, greatly increasing the cultivation speed of some cultivators in the Jade Blood sect. Shui Yuan had naturally brought the pill gourd with her from the 9 provinces to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. As long as there was a finished spirit pill, a suitable pill formula, and the appropriate raw materials, the pill gourd would be able to refine the corresponding spirit pill. Lu Yi had personally verified this. The pill gourd and sword gourd came from the same source. They were both treasures of the fortune vine, but they had different uses and each had their own mysteries. A supreme-grade spirit pill that could nourish the spirit was undoubtedly a good thing. Try this. Shui Yuan pointed to a jade bottle. The clone looked over and found that the spirit pill in front of the jade bottle was similar to the one he had eaten before, but the color was a little different. He was confused for a moment and swallowed it. After carefully tasting it, he soon noticed the difference. It was indeed the same spirit pill that could nourish the spirit, but there was clearly a little more impurity. In terms of grade, it should be considered a high-grade spirit pill. The clone was surprised. "You refined this?" Wuxia smiled. "We don't have this ability. It's all from the pill gourd." The clone was even more confused. "That's not right. The pill gourd produces supreme-grade spirit pills without any impurities. How can it be refined into such a spirit pill?" Although a high-grade spirit pill was very good, it should not have been refined from the pill gourd. Shui Yuan explained, "In the years that you were not in the 9 provinces, I studied the pill gourd and found that not only can it refine supreme-grade spirit pills, but it can also refine mid-grade and low-grade spirit pills with a little control." There was such a thing? Lu Yi had not discovered it before, but he had not studied the pill gourd for long, so it was normal that he did not discover it. He was unlike Shui Yuan, who had the pill gourd for so many years and knew all its uses. These two are spirit-refining pills. They were refined with the spirit-refining grass that you gave them as the main ingredient. What about these two? The clone looked at the 2 jade bottles at the side. The spirit pills in front of the 2 jade bottles did not look too different, but there was a slight difference in color and quality. "You'll know when you try." Shui Yuan picked up a better spirit pill and handed it to him. The clone tried it one after another and found that the effects of these 2 spirit pills were not targeted at the spirit, but the physical body. The treasure body pill is also a supreme grade and a high-grade spirit pill. The main ingredient is the spirit fish that you gave. Not bad, not bad. The clone could not help but nod. There were results so quickly. Although the pill gourd took most of the credit, Wuxia and Shui Yuan were not idle either. Moreover, the treasure body pill was quite useful to him. It was obvious that its medicinal effects were extraordinary. Who would not want to have a good physique? This was especially true for those Dharma cultivators who focused on cultivation. Their physiques were weaker than those of other sections. If there was something that could improve their physique, they would definitely not miss it. How many spirit jades can these things be sold for? Shui Yuan asked. The reason why the pill gourd was able to refine high-grade spirit pills was to sell them. Otherwise, it would be too exaggerated to sell them all as supreme-grade spirit pills. I'm not sure. I have to ask. The clone pondered for a moment and said, how about this? I'll take these 4 bottles of spirit pills to the Myriad Elephant Trade Union. I'll know how many spirit jades they can be sold for later. Shui Yun warned, then be careful. I understand. The clone nodded and put away the 4 bottles of spirit pills. He was about to leave when he thought of something and asked, what are the raw materials used to refine these spirit pills? How many materials are used at once and how many pills are produced? Shui Yuan answered truthfully. The clone had a rough idea and quickly left the 3-world island. At this moment, Lu Ye's main body also set off from the bottom of the Myriad Elephant Sea. With the clone's help, he left the sea without any worries. After putting away his clone, Lu Yi headed straight for the Myriad Elephant Island. Along the way, Lu Yi activated the 1,000 Faces spirit inscriptions to change his appearance. He even used the simulated might to disguise himself as Yu Yao. Both the 1,000 Faces spirit inscriptions and the simulated might inscriptions had been deduced by the talent tree. Thus, they were much stronger than before. This strength was not in battle but in concealing flaws. If the 1,000 Faces spirit inscriptions and the simulated might inscriptions in the past, there was a high chance that some special cultivators would be able to see through Lu Ye's disguise. He sped all the way to the Myriad Elephant Trade Union. This time, Lu Ye's disguise made him look quite old. After all, he had Yu Yao's cultivation. He was too young. Someone immediately led him into a private room and served him tea. Soon, a cultivator who seemed to be in charge came over. Lu Yi took a look. What a coincidence, it was actually Chao Xiang. There were many managers in the Myriad Elephant Trade Union who were in charge of dealing with customers. Lu Yi only recognized Chao Xiang because he had dealt with him a few times before and had even exchanged notes with him. He never thought that Chao Xiang would be the one to deal with him this time. Chao Xiang greets honored guest. May I know what honored guest needs? Chao Xiang's attitude was very polite. Lu Yi handed over the 4 bottles of spirit pills he had brought and said indifferently, how much are these worth? Selling spirit pills. Chao Xiang immediately reacted. This was a very common occurrence. Many alchemists would sell the spirit pills they refined to the Myriad Elephant Trade Union. Although the trade union had nurtured many alchemists and refined a large number of spirit pills every day, because the demand was too great, the trade union would take the initiative to purchase spirit pills delivered to their door, not to earn a profit but to fill their inventory. Of course, the Myriad Elephant Trade Union had requirements for the quality of the spirit pills they collected. If the quality of the spirit pills was too low, they would not buy them. From the looks of it, the guest in front of him should be an alchemist. Chao Xiang secretly thought to himself as he said, the price of a spirit pill depends on its quality. If honored guest doesn't mind, may I take a look? Lu Yi raised his hand and motioned, help yourself. Chao Xiang picked up a jade bottle and opened it. He first sniffed it from a foot away, then fanned himself with his hand and raised his eyebrows slightly. He had been a manager of the trade union for many years and had made deals with many alchemists. It could be said that although he was not an alchemist, his understanding of spirit pills was no less than any other alchemist. He could judge the quality of a spirit pill just by smelling its fragrance. Judging from the fragrance of this bottle of spirit pills, the quality was very good. It was very likely to be a high-grade spirit pill, and it had the effect of strengthening one's physique. Immediately after, he urged his spirit chi to form a layer of spirit chi on his palm and carefully poured out a treasure body pill from the jade bottle. After carefully observing it, he nodded slightly. It was indeed a high-grade spirit pill. It seemed that the alchemist in front of him had good alchemy skills. Chapter 1633. An alchemist who could refine such a bottle of high-grade spirit pills was naturally not bad at alchemy. He carefully put down the bottle of high-grade treasured body pills and picked up the second bottle. Opening the bottle and smelling the pill fragrance, Chao Xiang immediately judged that this was another bottle of treasured body pills, but this bottle seemed to be a little different from the previous one. After carefully distinguishing it, he was slightly moved. Could this be a top-grade treasured body pill? Pouring out a pill from the jade bottle and carefully examining it, Chao Xiang quickly determined that this was indeed a bottle of top-grade treasured body pills. This was a rare good. No matter how high an alchemist's alchemy skills were, it was not easy to refine a top-grade spirit pill. There were many factors that could affect the quality of the spirit pill during the refining process. The quality of the raw materials, the control of the fire, the material of the pill furnace, and even the mood of the alchemist would affect the result of the pill. Therefore, no matter how experienced an alchemist was, it was not easy to refine a top-grade spirit pill. To refine a top-grade spirit pill, one had to rely on skill and two had to rely on luck. Chao Xiang found that he had underestimated the alchemist in front of him. In addition, Lu Yi was disguised as Yu Yao, which made him even more respectful. Putting down the second bottle of treasured body pills, Chao Xiang picked up the third bottle. This time, judging from the pill fragrance, the mid-grade pill was definitely not a treasured body pill, but a spirit pill that targeted the soul. It should be a spirit refining pill without a doubt. Chao Xiang was immediately shocked. Although the treasured body pill was not bad, its value could not be compared to the spirit refining pill. After all, the main ingredient of the latter was the spirit refining grass. It could be said that even if the quality of the spirit refining pill in his hand was only mid-grade, its value was much higher than the top-grade treasured body pill. Moreover, through the pill fragrance, Chao Xiang judged that the spirit refining pill in his hand was not only mid-grade, it was actually a high-grade spirit refining pill. The difficulty of refining a spirit refining pill was much greater than that of a treasured body pill. The fact that the alchemist in front of him could refine a top-grade treasured body pill was not enough to move Chao Xiang. To be able to refine such a high-grade spirit refining pill undoubtedly meant that the other party's alchemy skills had at least reached the level of a master. However, Chao Xiang was someone who had seen the world. He dealt with customers all year round, so his horizons were naturally not comparable to ordinary people. Therefore, although he realized that the quality of the spirit refining pill was not bad, he still looked normal. He gently put it down and picked up the last bottle. As usual, he sniffed the pill fragrance. In the next moment, Chao Xiang's eyes suddenly widened. He couldn't help but exclaim, This time he didn't ask for Lu Ye's permission. Shocked, he quickly poured out a spirit refining pill from the jade bottle and examined it carefully. The more he looked, the more surprised he became. After looking at the first pill, he still couldn't do it, so he looked at the second pill. It wasn't until he had looked at all of the spirit refining pills that Chao Xiang managed to suppress his abnormal expression. However, the shock in his heart couldn't be any greater. Because this bottle was actually filled with top-grade spirit refining pills. All of them were the same size and color. Although he had made deals with many alchemists and bought top-grade spirit pills from others, in reality he rarely had the opportunity to buy an entire bottle. Most of the time he would only buy 1 or 2 pills, and some would even buy 3 or 4 pills. And this was the first time in history that an entire bottle of top-grade spirit refining pill had appeared. Therefore, it wasn't that he liked to make a fuss over nothing, but that he had never encountered such a situation before. Gently taking a deep breath, Chao Xiang pondered for a moment before asking, "Honored guest, are these spirit pills for sale?" Lu Yi calmly swallowed a mouthful of tea and put on the airs of an alchemy grandmaster. "If they aren't for sale, are they for entertainment?" Chao Xiang blushed with shame. Honored guest must be joking. Since they are for sale, this Chao will make the decision to offer a price. Of course, if honored guest is satisfied, the transaction is complete. If honored guest is not satisfied, we can discuss it again. Myriad Elephant Chamber of Commerce has opened its doors to do business and pays particular attention to honesty and fairness. Lu Yi declined to comment. Chao Xiang immediately pointed to the bottle of high-grade treasure body pills and offered a price, but Lu Yi remained indifferent. Chao Xiang wasn't sure if this price satisfied honored guest, but the price he offered was indeed very fair. After setting a price for the bottle of top-grade treasure body pills, Lu Yi found that although there was only a difference of 1 grade between top-grade and top-grade treasure body pills, the price was more than 3 times higher. However, because the treasure body pill itself was not a rare item in the Myriad Elephant Sea, the raw materials for refining this pill were also very easy to obtain. It was not necessary to use spirit fish, but there were many alternatives, so although the price was beautiful, it was still reasonable. Because Lu Yi had a channel to obtain spirit fish, if he used the flesh and blood of spirit fish to refine treasure body pills, he could save a lot of materials. In this way, even if it was a white spirit fish, if its flesh and blood essence were refined into a treasure body pill, the price would increase by more than 10 times. It was not bad. In the future, even if the three-world island only relied on selling treasure body pills, they could still maintain the cultivation needs of hundreds of cultivators. However, the treasure body pills were only a side benefit. What Lu Yi wanted to know was the price of the spirit refining pill. When it came to the spirit refining pill, Chao Xiang was obviously more cautious and offered a price for the bottle of high-grade spirit refining pill. Lu Yi immediately became spirited because the price of this bottle of high-grade spirit refining pill was 5 times higher than the top-grade treasure body pills. However, thinking about it carefully, it wasn't that strange. This was because the refining materials were different. This bottle of spirit refining pills required a spirit refining grass as the main material, but that bottle of treasure body pills didn't require a whole spirit fish. What about this bottle? Lu Yi pointed at the top-grade spirit refining pill and asked. The value of high-grade spirit refining pill was so high, there must be more top-grade ones. Chao Xiang did not directly offer a price but said, if honored guest trusts me, I have a suggestion. You might as well listen. Chao Xiang said, in 5 days the Chamber of Commerce will hold an auction. If honored guest wants to maximize the value of this pill, I suggest that this pill be auctioned. I believe that many people will be interested in this pill. At that time, the price will definitely satisfy you. Hearing this, Lu Yi suddenly remembered that the last time he participated in the Myriad Elephant Chamber of Commerce's auction, he had indeed taken out a bottle of top-grade spirit pills for auction. At that time it had been snatched up. That day the spirit pills were only used for recovery. In terms of use and value they could not compare to the spirit refining pill. Therefore, this bottle of spirit refining pills did indeed have the qualifications to be auctioned and would definitely sell for a high price. This was especially true for the Yu Yao, who had the most urgent need for this item. This was because if the Yu Yao wanted to advance to the Sunshine Realm, they would have to consider the sublimation of their spirit, which referred to their divine sense. The Yu Yao's value naturally could not be compared to the Star Mansions, so if the spirit refining pills were to be auctioned, it would not be a problem to sell them for a good price. Chao Xiang's suggestion was indeed out of consideration for Lu Yi. Of course, he could also take advantage of this opportunity to add to the auction's excitement. However, how could Lu Yi have the time to wait for an auction? Moreover, he was worried that these bottles of spirit pills would attract the attention of others. Even if the Myriad Elephant Chamber of Commerce had a good reputation, there were still some things that needed to be taken care of. Otherwise, he would not have disguised himself as a Yu Yao. Immediately Dan Dan said, name a price. If it's appropriate, I will sell them to your Chamber of Commerce. As for the auction, forget about it. Chao Xiang sighed inwardly. But then again, if he bought this bottle of top-grade spirit pills, he could also sell it at the auction. Moreover, it would bring even more profit to the Chamber of Commerce. Therefore, after pondering for a moment, Chao Xiang named a price. This price was 10 times higher than the price of the high-grade spirit refining pill. Lu Yi quickly calculated in his mind. Before he left, he had specifically asked Hua Xi and Shui Yuan about the materials and quantities needed to refine these spirit pills, so it was easy to calculate the profit. The top-grade body refining pills profit was about 5 times, which could be considered a huge profit. The spirit refining pills profit was even more incredible. Just the high-grade spirit refining pills profit was about 10 times, and the top-grade spirit refining pills profit was 100 times. Li Shang had told Lu Yi the price of the spirit refining grass. One stock was about 5,000 spirit jades. Including the other materials, the cost of this bottle of spirit refining pills would not exceed 10,000 spirit jades. However, if sold, it would be worth at least 1,000,000 spirit jades. 1,000,000 spirit jades was not too much in Lu Ye's eyes, but to an ordinary cultivator, it was not a small number. One must know that Tang Jun did not have such a net worth in the past. It was a good way to make a fortune. This was only the price of a bottle of top-grade spirit refining pills, but to a cultivator in the late stage of Moonjade Realm, if they could use 20 or 30 bottles of these spirit pills in exchange for an opportunity to break through to the Sunshine Realm, it would only cost 20 or 30 million spirit jades. 20 or 30 million spirit jades in exchange for an opportunity to break through to the Sunshine Realm, who would not be willing? A moment later, Lu Yi was warmly sent off by Chao Xiang and left the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce. Chao Xiang was undoubtedly very attentive to a guest like Lu Yi. Originally, he wanted to exchange a musical note imprint with Lu Yi. Next time, if Lu Yi had any good things, he could come to him. In the end, Lu Yi did not agree, which made Chao Xiang feel very regretful. However, Chao Xiang was already very satisfied with this deal, because he could also obtain some benefits from it. Lu Yi returned to the Three-World Island and found Wuxia and Shui Yuan, who had been waiting for him. He told them about the prophets and gave them the spirit jades. Shui Yuan said, "It seems like it won't be too difficult for us to establish a foothold here, but this kind of business won't last long." Of course, all of this was based on the foundation of the pill gourd. Otherwise, with just her and Huasi's alchemy skills, they might have suffered a loss. How could they make such a big profit? However, this was only temporary. When their cultivation improved and their skills became more proficient, it would not be a problem for them to make a living in the Wanxiang Sea with their own skills. Take Hua Qianying for example. With her alchemy skills, it would not be a problem for her to rely on the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce. Lu Yi nodded and said, "Indeed. Like the previous deal, selling a few bottles occasionally was not a big problem. However, if they sold a large number of spirit pills over a long period of time, it would inevitably be suspicious." Huasi said, "Maybe we can do this. There are many top forces in the Wanxiang Sea, so there's no need to sell all of them to the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce. We can choose to sell them to other chambers of commerce. This way, every 3 to 5 months, we can go to the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce and sell a few bottles. There won't be any problems." This was also a good idea. After pondering for a moment, Lu Yi said, "For the time being, we'll only sell the treasure body pills. See if you can research other spirit pills. Don't sell the spirit refining pills, we can use them ourselves in the future." Chapter 1634. Although the spirit refining pill was much more profitable than the treasure body pill and Lu Yi had a lot of spirit refining grass, there was nothing wrong with keeping such a good thing for later. It would not be too late to sell it when he needed it. The treasure body pill was not as profitable as the spirit refining pill, but the raw materials were easy to find. Lu Yi could get a lot of spirit fish by asking the mermaid gang for help. Therefore, Lu Yi felt that he should only sell some spirit pills that were easy to find. Even so, it could meet the needs of the Three Realms cultivators. After thinking for a while, Lu Yi said, "Although I'm not selling it, I still need to refine the spirit refining pill. There's no need to save materials." Because he had to train in the Blue Hall, he often needed to use things to nourish the soul. In the past, he used the spirit refining grass. Now that he could refine the spirit refining pill, it was more cost-effective. Moreover, even in the Constellation Mansion, one could take the spirit refining pill to strengthen one's soul. The strengthening of the soul was very beneficial to a cultivator. Therefore, even if he did not sell the spirit refining pill, he could not stop refining it. In any case, it did not take much effort to refine the spirit refining pill. He only needed to put in the corresponding raw materials. Moreover, the pills produced were all top-grade spirit pills without any impurities. After saying that, Lu Yi gave all the spirit refining grass and spirit fish to Huasi and Shui Yuan. In any case, with them he would not have to worry about not having enough spirit pills to eat in the future. He did not need to keep these materials with him. Shui Yuan and Huasi went to work again. Since they had decided to sell the treasure body pill to maintain their livelihood, they naturally had to start refining spirit pills in large quantities. Lu Yi stayed on the Three Realms Island for a day. When he was about to leave for the Constellation Mansion, he suddenly had a thought. Selling top-grade spirit pills was not a long-term business. That was because he could not find a suitable partner, so he could only refine some high-grade spirit pills and mix them in and sell them separately. But the Mermaid Clan, wasn't that a suitable partner? No matter what Lu Yi sold them, he did not need to worry about them. Moreover, the Mermaid Clan was rich. They owned such a large spirit jade vein and had lived there for many years. The wealth they had accumulated was probably beyond imagination. However, the Mermaid Clan did not use spirit jade vein, so they rarely mined the vein. Lu Yi also wanted to treat the mermaid race as an ally of the Three-World Island. If he could help them get rid of the curse, then the Three-World Island would have the support of an entire race. Even if someone came to attack, they wouldn't have to worry about not having enough strength to defend themselves. Selling some elixirs to his allies would increase their strength and strengthen the defenses of the Three-World Island. Killing two birds with one stone. Come to think of it, he still owed the Merepeople clan a lot of spirit jades. When he left the 10,000 Elephant Sea, he was embarrassingly short of money, so he went to the Merepeople clan to borrow some spirit jades. When he saw them again this time, they didn't ask him to pay them back. He could use spirit pills to repay his debt. Thinking of this, Lu Yi quickly found Shui Yuan and Hua Xi, who were refining spirit pills. In a day, even with the help of the pill gourds, the two women did not refine many spirit pills. The treasure body pills and spirit refining pills added together were only 100 pills. Lu Yi packed everything up and returned to his sleeping quarters. He took out the azure sea snail and blew into it. The door opened and Zhang Xian stepped in. When he regained his senses, he was already standing in the constellation hall. "Young friend, you're here." Miao Yin was standing to the side. Lu Yi nodded lightly, then looked into the distance. At this moment, Bai Lu and two other clansmen were sitting in a corner of the constellation hall. The energy fluctuations on their bodies were fluctuating. Lu Yi sensed a little, then said, "Congratulations, the noble clan has 3 more Yu Yao." Bai Lu and the others had clearly succeeded in their breakthroughs. Currently, the energy fluctuations on their bodies were shockingly the fluctuations of their magic power. However, because they had just broken through, their cultivation bases were still unstable, and it was difficult for them to control their own power. This was why their energy fluctuations were so obvious. Miao Yin was clearly very happy. She smiled slightly and said, "I have to thank you for your help, young friend. The Temple of Gods does have the miraculous ability to help cultivators break through to the Yu Yao realm. I originally thought that there would be some failures this time, but I didn't think that everything would go so smoothly." Miao Yin wasn't too worried about Bai Lu breaking through to the Yu Yao realm. After all, she had accumulated enough energy. The other two clansmen were just a little weaker than Bai Lu, so Miao Yin had always been worried that they would fail. If they failed to break through, the consequences wouldn't be too good. This was because the process of breaking through to the Yu Yao realm was a process where the spiritual power in a cultivator's body transformed into magic power. If this process passed, then everything would be fine. However, if they were stuck halfway through and the energy in their body became neither spiritual power nor magic power, then at best, their strength would be greatly reduced, and they would have no hope of reaching the eternal realm. At worst, the energy in their body would become chaotic and they would die on the spot. However, her worries didn't come to fruition. Not to mention Bai Lu, even the other two clansmen, whose accumulations were slightly weaker, were able to break through without any setbacks. This was clearly the Temple of God's effect. Great Elder is too polite. I have a very close relationship with the noble clan, so this is just a small matter. In the future, if anyone in the noble clan wants to break through to the Yu Yao realm, feel free to call me. Miao Yin expressed her gratitude. Then, in the future we will have to trouble you. Young friend, please wait for a moment. I will call them. There's no need to rush. Lu Yi stopped her. Miao Yin looked at her suspiciously. Lu Yi muttered to herself, trying to think of where to start. In the end she said, "Great Elder, I heard the princess mention the curse power in the noble clan's bloodline. It is because of this curse power that the noble clan can only live under the 10,000 Elephant Sea, unable to leave this special environment." Yes. Miao Yan's expression dimmed when she mentioned this. Back then, my ancestor offended a great expert, so he was inflicted with this curse power. It has been passed down for generations and it has not changed. What happens when you leave the 10,000 Elephant Sea? Lu Yi asked. Miao Yin said, "According to the ancient records of our ancestors, there were clansmen who once left the 10,000 Elephant Sea. However, not long after leaving the 10,000 Elephant Sea, they died from exhaustion. This wasn't the only case. In the first 1,000 years after they were inflicted with the curse, several clansmen left the 10,000 Elephant Sea. In the end they all met the same ending. Not only was Xingxiu one of them, but even Yu Yao and Ri Zhao." Lu Yi was horrified. Even Ri Zhao couldn't resist the curse power? Who exactly did the Merfolk clan's ancestor offend back then? How could he have such a heaven-defying ability? Moreover, this curse was too poisonous. It forced the Merfolk clan to live under the 10,000 Elephant Sea like a star beast. "Young friend, why are you suddenly bringing this up?" Miao Yin asked. Lu Yi deliberated for a moment before saying, "It's like this. I have a small method that might be able to help you solve this problem." When he saw Miao Yan's surprised and shocked expression, he hurriedly added, "Of course, it's only a possibility. I don't know if it'll work, so I have to give it a try. However, Great Elder, don't worry. Even if it doesn't work, at most they'll suffer some injuries. It won't be life-threatening. They'll recover after a little rest." Miao Yin became even more excited. "Young friend, are you serious?" "It's only a possibility," Lu Yi reiterated with a serious expression. He didn't know if his talent tree would work or not, so how could he guarantee it? Thus, he didn't dare to speak too confidently, lest he disappoint Miao Yen. Miao Yen said excitedly, even if it's only a possibility, it's still necessary to give it a try. My clan has been waiting for this opportunity for too long. Although Miao Yen had long felt that Lu Yi was the person who could solve the problem plaguing her clan, she hadn't noticed any signs of Lu Ye's ability. She had thought that Lu Ye's strength wasn't enough. She wondered if he'd come up with something after advancing to the Rizhao realm. Who knew that Lu Yi would suddenly take the initiative to bring up this matter today? Even though she was at the late stage of the Moon Jade realm, Miao Yen couldn't suppress the excitement in her heart. Young friend, what do you want to do? How do you want my clan to cooperate? Miao Yen asked eagerly. Lu Yi muttered, if Great Elder doesn't mind, can I take a look at your body first? As soon as he said this, he suddenly realized that something was wrong and quickly changed his words. I want to see your bloodline. Miao Yen didn't realize Lu Ye's mistake and quickly nodded. Young friend, please do as you wish. She didn't know how to cooperate with Lu Yi. Lu Yi stepped forward and raised his hand. Great Elder, please give me your hand. Miao Yen stretched out her small snow-white hand and placed it on Lu Ye's. Lu Yi warned, Great Elder, please don't use your Fa Li. It may be a little uncomfortable, so please bear with it. Saying so, he urged the power of the talent tree to enter Miao Yan's body through the contact between her palms. Miao Yan immediately frowned slightly because she felt a scorching power coming from Lu Yi. But strangely, although this power was scorching, it gave off a relatively gentle feeling, not violent at all. Moreover, this power seemed to be burning something in her body. Because she didn't resist and even suppressed the flow of Fa Li, Miao Yen felt some damage to her body even though the power was gentle. However, this damage was very slight and could be easily recovered with her cultivation, so she didn't need to worry too much about it. As the scorching power continued to burn, Miao Yan's expression changed. She could vaguely feel that something innate in her body was disappearing. As this strange feeling disappeared, her body and mind relaxed a little. She could even see some strange mist rising from her flesh and blood. It worked. She suddenly showed a look of pleasant surprise. Although she didn't know how Lu Yi did it or what kind of power he used, the strange mist was obviously the power of the curse hidden in her bloodline. At this moment, the power of the curse was being burned away, so she felt her body and mind relax, as if the invisible shackles that had been binding her were beginning to loosen. After a long while, Lu Yi withdrew his hand. Miao Yen looked at him with some dissatisfaction, obviously hoping that Lu Yi would continue. The reason Lu Yi stopped was because he didn't know if this would have any effect on Miao Yen. Unlike when he burned away the impurities that invaded his body, he could clearly see clues from the changes in the talent tree. Others couldn't see it directly, so they could only ask Miao Yen. Chapter 1635. If this method didn't work, then there was no need to continue. If it worked, then it wouldn't be too late to continue. However, when he met Yen Miao's bright eyes, Lu Yi knew he didn't have to ask. The talent tree's power could indeed resolve the curse. Young friend, Yen Miao opened his mouth but was at a loss for words. He didn't know what to say. Although he was basically sure, Lu Yi couldn't help but ask, is it working? Yes. Yen Miao nodded heavily, looking at Lu Yi with bright eyes. I can feel that the curse's power in my body has decreased. Only decreased, it hadn't been completely destroyed. This was within his expectations. After all, time was a bit short. When he helped Wuxia and the others destroy the dancer's power, it had taken some effort. The curse of the merfolk was even more difficult to deal with than the dancer's power. After all, it was passed down through the bloodline. How long does Great Elder estimate it will take to completely resolve the problem? Lu Yi asked. He asked this mainly because the Azure Sea Snail's door was about to open. If he didn't hurry back, the door would disappear. Yen Miao also realized this. He pondered for a moment and said, I estimate it will take at least 4 hours. 4 hours? It definitely wouldn't be enough. Lu Yi frowned. In this situation, if he wanted to continue helping Yen Miao destroy the curse, there were only 2 choices. One was to go back first and come back when the Azure Sea Snail could be used again. However, under the premise that time was limited, they still couldn't resolve the problem in one go. They would have to come back a 3rd time, a 4th time. Even if they had a month, it wouldn't be enough. This was just Yen Miao. Although there weren't many merfolk, there were still quite a few of them. They couldn't keep using this method. Who knew how long that would take? If this choice didn't work, then he could only ignore the door and let it disappear. He would help Yen Miao completely resolve the problem here. Then he would swim out of the Wanxiang Sea. This was somewhat risky. Lu Yi had tried it before, but there were many terrifying star beasts in the sea, forcing him to give up halfway. However, it was different now. If Yan Miao escorted him, it wouldn't be a big problem. Soon Lu Yi made a decision. He hoped that the mermaid clan would be the most reliable ally of the three-world island in the future. If he could help the mermaid clan get rid of the curse, it would be greatly beneficial to the three-world island. It was understandable that he would take some risks. Let's continue, Lu Yi said, raising his hand. Miao Yan hesitated. But young friend, this door should be disappearing soon. Lu Yi said, indeed, so I'll have to trouble Grand Elder to send me off later. Mistress Yan immediately understood and felt grateful. She nodded and said, don't worry, little friend. I will definitely send you out safely. Raising his hand, he placed it on Lu Ye's palm and closed his eyes, waiting excitedly for the changes that were about to happen to him. As time passed, Lu Yi constantly urged the power of the talent tree, carefully controlling it so as not to cause more damage to Miao Yan. A moment later, the Azure Sea Snail's door disappeared without Lu Yi noticing. Since he had already decided to let Miao Yan escort him, he didn't need to care about whether the door was still there or not. Yan Miao's estimation wasn't too far off. About 4 hours later, she suddenly opened her eyes. Her eyes were sparkling. Even though the talent tree's power had been incinerated, causing some injuries to her body, the feeling of her body and mind suddenly relaxing made her understand that the power of the curse in her body had completely disappeared. It was an indescribable feeling. It was as if she had always been carrying a shackle to survive, but because she had always been carrying it, she hadn't been able to sense it. It was only now that the shackle had suddenly disappeared that she suddenly felt the difference. Lu Yi noticed her movements and opened his eyes to look at her. Seeing this, he knew that everything was fine. He stopped urging the talent tree's power and asked, does Grand Elder feel uncomfortable anywhere? Yes, the injuries to her body were indeed uncomfortable. No matter how gentle the talent tree's power was, it couldn't be harmless to her. However, compared to her current relaxed state, this kind of injury was completely negligible. Miao Yan's eyes were slightly red as if she wanted to cry. This was because there really was a solution to the problem that had plagued their race for countless years in her generation. Moreover, this was the first time she had personally experienced it. She bent her knees slightly and bowed to Lu Yi in an extremely solemn manner. Thank you, young friend. Miao Yan will never forget this kindness. The Merfolk clan will never forget this kindness. Lu Yi hurriedly raised his hand to support her. You're too polite, Grand Elder. These words sounded a little familiar. Back when he returned to Apeiron after the great battle with the vampires of the insectoids, those Rizhao said the same thing. He thought for a moment and said, Grand Elder, are you sure that the curse in your body has disappeared? Miao Yan nodded. Although there's no direct evidence, I can basically confirm it. If you want to verify it, you'll have to try it out. In any case, they had to escort Lu Yi out of the Wanxiang Sea. Miao Yan immediately decided that she would also leave the Wanxiang Sea when the time came and see the situation. If there were no more tragic endings like her ancestors' bloodlines, there was no doubt that Lu Ye's method had worked. Lu Yi immediately understood her thoughts and couldn't help but say, Grand Elder, why don't you find another member of the clan? We should be more cautious about this kind of thing. Miao Yan was the Grand Elder of the Merfolk clan after all. The Merfolk queen was still young, so it could be said that Miao Yan was the de facto leader of the Merfolk clan. If something happened to Miao Yan, then the friendship between the Merfolk clan and the Merfolk clan would probably be ruined. Regardless of whether it was for public or private reasons, Lu Yi didn't want Miao Yan to try it out herself. Even if something happened to another member of the clan, the impact wouldn't be too great. However, Miao Yan shook her head and said, there are some things that I have to personally experience to know the details of. Moreover, no one in the clan is stronger than me. If something happens, I can return to the Wanxiang Sea immediately. Young friend, you don't have to worry too much. Since she was so insistent, Lu Yi couldn't dissuade her. I'll recover a bit first. Young friend, please wait for a moment. Miao Yan walked to the side and sat down cross-legged. She took out a recovery pill that Lu Yi had given her and swallowed it. Lu Yi originally wanted to discuss the matter of the recovery pill with her, but he could only endure it. In any case, he was already here. There would be plenty of opportunities to turn back. There was no need to rush. Bai Lu walked over. She had seen what Lu Yi and the Grand Elder were doing just now. She had also heard their conversation. She was secretly excited. She didn't think that the problem of the Merfolk clan's curse would really be solved just like that. Although the Grand Elder still had to personally verify it, it was still a very big hope. Bai Lu walked up to Lu Yi and expressed her thanks with a solemn expression. The two of them chatted for a while. Lu Yi asked her about how she felt about breaking through to Yu Yao here, as well as the details of the process. He wasn't far from Yu Yao. Sooner or later he would take this step. Thus, there was no harm in understanding it in advance. Moreover, Lu Yi wanted to know if his previous thoughts were correct. After listening to Bai Lu's detailed explanation, Lu Yi realized that his thoughts were correct. He didn't need the help of the Constellation Hall or any other treasures to break through to Yu Yao. This was because Bai Lu said that the main function of the Constellation Hall was to help a cultivator purify the spiritual power in their body. This way, the higher the purity of the spiritual power, the easier it would be to convert it into magic power. Naturally, the process of breaking through would be easier. Furthermore, the higher the purity of the spiritual power, the higher the starting point of breaking through to Yu Yao. This was because the magic power converted from spiritual power would be stronger. There was a difference in strength between Yu Yao who had just broken through to Yu Yao. The problem lay in the might of their magic power. The root of this difference was the purity of their constellation realm's spiritual power. Lu Ye's spiritual power didn't have the slightest bit of impurity ever since he started cultivating. There was no need to purify it. Thus, he really didn't need the help of the Constellation Hall to break through to Yu Yao. Although he didn't need the help of the Constellation Hall, he still needed to find a suitable cultivation art to use during the process of breaking through to Yu Yao. During the process of converting spiritual power into magic power, if a cultivator relied on their own efforts, it would take twice the effort for half the result. Thus, a long time ago there were cultivators who researched cultivation arts specifically used during this process. These cultivation arts could help a cultivator convert their spiritual power. This type of cultivation art was useless during normal times. It was specifically used during the process of breaking through to Yu Yao. Thus, cultivators jokingly called it the Dragon Gate cultivation art. The Dragon Gate cultivation art was a general term. In the entire starry sky, there were countless Dragon Gate cultivation arts. Every race and every force had their own Dragon Gate cultivation art. They were neither good nor bad. Although there wasn't much of a difference between good and bad for cultivators, there was a difference between suitable and unsuitable. What cultivators needed to do was find a Dragon Gate cultivation art that was suitable for them. The Myriad Elephant trading firm sold this item, so Lu Yi had never been in a hurry. Moreover, Lu Yi had many Yu Yao by his side. Every Yu Yao had passed through this stage and they had also grasped many Dragon Gate arts. When the time came, all he needed to do was ask around and find a suitable one. This was one of the benefits of connecting to the starry sky. If the 9 provinces remained stagnant, even if the constellation halls cultivated to a level where they could break through to Yu Yao, they would only spend more time and effort to break through to Yu Yao. Lu Yi took the opportunity to ask Bai Lu about the Mermaid clan's Dragon Gate cultivation art. Bai Lu didn't hide anything and directly said that the Mermaid clan had more than a dozen Dragon Gate cultivation arts. She would engrave them and give them to Lu Yi later. Lu Yi thanked her. Not long after, Yan Miao recovered. She was a late-stage Yu Yao cultivator. Even if she wasn't a body cultivator, her physique was no joke. Her previous injuries weren't serious, so she naturally didn't need much time. Lu Yi reached out and pushed open the doors of the Constellation Hall. Several people filed out. After everyone left, the doors of the Constellation Hall slammed shut. Bai Lu took out the golden conch that could repel seawater and create a vacuum space. She blew on it and the surrounding seawater immediately dispersed. Lu Yi nodded inwardly. When he traveled with Yan Miao later, he had to ask her to bring this golden conch along just in case. He didn't want to use up too much fuel for his talent tree. If that happened, he would be in a dilemma in the Myriad Elephant Sea. Chapter 1636. The group returned to the Emperor's Snail Palace peacefully. Lu Yi was arranged to stay in the room he stayed in last time. Yan Miao was determined to personally verify it while escorting Lu Yi away. Naturally, there were a lot of things to be prepared and instructed. There would be a lot of resistance. The other elders were probably unwilling to let her take this risk, but if Yan Miao made a decision, no one could stop her. They couldn't imprison her. She was the great elder and was the strongest. The other mermaids were no match for her. Bai Lu came over and handed over the Dragon Gate art to Lu Yi. She did things swiftly and decisively without any hesitation. Bai Shuang, the queen of the merfolk, also came with her. The little girl looked the same as Lu Yi had seen before. Lu Yi had asked why the queen of the mermaid clan was Bai Shuang and not Bai Lu or Yen Miao. Bai Lu explained that the mermaid clan valued bloodline inheritance. Bai Shuang had inherited some special bloodline from the previous queen, but Bai Lu didn't, so the queen could only be Bai Shuang. Unfortunately, Bai Shuang was too young and not very strong. When she grew up in the future, her potential would surpass all of her clan members. In history, only the queen of the mermaid clan had the hope of being promoted to sunshine. Since ancient times, no other mermaid had been promoted to sunshine except for the queen. Ever since Lu Yi helped her inscribe a tattoo, the little girl had a good impression of Lu Yi. Now that she heard from Bai Lu that Lu Yi had the ability to resolve the curse, she was even more interested. While Lu Yi and Bai Lu were chatting, Bai Shuang sat quietly on the side like a porcelain doll. "How is Ghost?" Lu Yi suddenly asked. "Senior sister Ghost is doing well. She has been working hard on her cultivation recently," Bai Lu said. "Take me to see her." Lu Yi didn't want to find trouble with Ghost, but he wanted to get the other Dragon Gate tactics from her. He needed them, and the cultivators of the 9 regions also needed them. There was no harm in collecting more. Bai Lu said, "Then don't bully her." Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. "Did she say something bad about me in front of you?" Ghost was a woman who would gossip behind someone's back. Bai Lu pursed her lips and smiled. He didn't say anything. Clearly he had said something, and quite a lot. When Lu Yi saw Ghost again, she was sitting on a fragrant bed with a pink curtain. This should be Bai Lu's boudoir. With her back to the crowd, Ghost's voice was sweet. "Xiaolu, come and cultivate quickly. I've been waiting for you for many days." She smiled and turned her head expectantly, only to see an annoying face. Her smile disappeared as if she had seen a pile of dog shit. "Why are you here?" Lu Yi frowned and looked at her, then at the bed. "And Xiaolu?" From the looks of it, Ghost and Bai Lu were getting along well recently. They were even using such intimate terms. "Do you have the Dragon Gate formula?" Lu Yi went straight to the point. He couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with her. "Yes." Ghost replied instinctively. "Give it to me." Lu Yi stretched out his hand. Ghost was stunned for a moment. She didn't understand why Lu Yi was acting so matter-of-factly. Soon she flew into a rage. "You want this and that? I asked you to marry me, but you won't. Who do you think I am?" Back then, Lu Yi had tried to see the ghostly patterns on her body. Now he didn't even let go of her Dragon Gate formula. This was too much. "Marry?" Bai Lu's eyes widened. She had long known that Ghost and Lu Yi didn't get along well because Ghost often said bad things about Lu Yi to her. According to Ghost's description, Lu Yi was her lifelong enemy. Now he actually took the initiative to ask her to marry him? Had senior sister Ghost always been a person who didn't mean what she said? Bai Shuang stood next to Bai Lu. Her eyes were also wide open. Her calm eyes were overflowing with excitement, as if she had seen something amazing. Sure enough, the people outside were very interesting, unlike the merfolk who were all lifeless. Lu Yi thought for a moment and said, "Of course I treat you as a friend." Ghost snorted and stared at Lu Yi. "Do you believe that yourself?" Lu Yi looked back at her calmly, her eyes full of sincerity. If she hadn't recalled how Lu Yi had treated her before, Ghost would have believed her. Although she didn't want to do as Lu Yi wished, she had no choice but to bow her head under the eaves. Ghost didn't dare to offend Lu Yi, lest she was left alone here. She liked cultivating here because she had never cultivated here before. It made her feel that there was hope in the sunshine. However, she couldn't stay here forever. She still had to ask Lu Yi for help. She angrily took out a few jade slips and threw them to Lu Yi as if they were trash. "It's all here." Lu Yi took them and put them away. Then she turned to Bai Lu and said, "I'll be leaving first." Bai Lu nodded. After Lu Yi left, Ghost's angry voice came from behind. "Will it kill you to thank me? How rude." The next day, Miao Yan came looking for her with an excited expression. "Young friend, I'm ready. Let's go." She couldn't wait to go out to sea to test it. Lu Yi had no problem with that. When the two of them walked out together, Lu Yi found that there were many people standing outside. Several elders of the mermaid clan, Bai Lu and Bai Shuang, were here. They all looked serious. Miao Yan's experiment was too dangerous. They couldn't help but worry. If something happened, the mermaid clan would lose their strongest combat power. However, the elders had obviously tried to stop her. Since Miao Yan was determined, how could they stop her? Just as Miao Yan said, some things had to be experienced to know the situation. Don't make such sad faces. This trip won't be too big of a problem. I know the situation in my body better than any of you. The power of the curse should have been completely removed. You all just wait in the palace. Once there is a result, I will inform you immediately. The second elder couldn't help but say, Great Elder, let's reconsider this matter. Yen Miao shook his head. My clan has been waiting for this day for far too long. As this generation's great elder, I hope that I can be the first clan member to leave the 10,000 Elephant Sea. This can be considered a bit of selfishness on my part. When the mermaids heard this, they couldn't stop her. They could only say some auspicious words and hope that this trip would go smoothly. A moment later, Miao Yen and Lu Yi set out under everyone's gazes. This was the depths of the Wanxiang Sea. If they wanted to go out to sea, it would take at least a month. Moreover, this was under the premise that they found the right direction. If they went in the wrong direction, it might take several months. Lu Yi didn't know which direction to go, so she could only choose one at random. He wouldn't waste time because he was going to cultivate in the Wanxiang Sea anyway. Traveling like this was actually also a form of cultivation. However, he would occasionally pay attention to the changes in the fuel of the talent tree. If he found anything wrong, he would ask Miao Yen to activate the power of the golden conch that could repel seawater. Under the 10,000 Elephant Sea, even Yen Miao could not use his magic power to carry Lu Yi forward. Therefore, both of them rode on a seahorse star beast. This thing's speed was very fast under the 10,000 Elephant Sea, and it was not any slower than the cultivators flying in the sky. Along the way, Lu Yi finally had time to discuss the second matter of this trip with Miao Yen. He didn't have time to talk about it when he was in the Constellation Hall. Grand Elder, I borrowed some spiritual jades from your clan last time. I'm afraid I can't repay them for the time being. Miao Yen smiled and said, These spiritual jades are nothing. If you want, I can tell them to mine more for you. Our mermaid clan doesn't need that much. Lu Yi said, If I were alone, I would accept Great Elder's good intentions. However, I have a group of clansmen under me who need spiritual jades for cultivation. Therefore, I would like to strike a deal with your noble clan. Miao Yen said, That's no problem. What do you want to trade? Spirit pills. We can only refine spirit pills now. Lu Yi said as he asked Miao Yen to take out the golden conch. He activated its power to create a vacuum and handed over the spirit pills he brought before. Please take a look, Grand Elder. Lu Yi had actually made a deal with the mermaid clan before, but at that time, everyone had a tacit understanding and didn't mention it. Now, if he wanted to cooperate for a long time, he had to make things clear. Spirit pills were indeed something the mermaid clan liked. Because the mermaid clan couldn't refine them, they had basically used up all the spirit pills Lu Yi brought before. Therefore, if Lu Yi wanted to use spirit pills to make a deal with the mermaid clan, Miao Yen would welcome it. Miao Yen took the jade bottle Lu Yi handed over and examined it. Unfortunately, although her cultivation was high, she didn't know much about spirit pills. Even so, under the premise of comparison, she was able to find some problems. Little friend, the quality of these spirit pills seems to be much better than the ones you brought before? Lu Yi immediately began to educate her about the quality of spirit pills. Only then did Miao Yen realize that there were so many things to pay attention to. After hearing Lu Yi say that these spirit pills were all top grade, Miao Yen was undoubtedly very surprised. Lu Yi also said that top-grade spirit pills had no impurities and could be taken by any cultivator without any hidden dangers. They were good things that could only be found by chance. Even if a skilled alchemist wanted to refine top-grade spirit pills, they had to rely on luck. However, these top-grade spirit pills brought by Lu Yi couldn't be explained by good or bad luck. It's like this. I have a treasure that can assist in alchemy, so the number of top-grade spirit pills produced is relatively large. This is a treasure body pill, it can strengthen one's physique. Miao Yan's eyes lit up. Good stuff. The mermaid clan's cultivation direction was mainly to strengthen their physique. Because it was difficult for them to use spells when fighting against those star beasts under the sea, they could only fight in close quarters. This treasure body pill was undoubtedly very useful to the mermaid clan. Miao Yan soon found another kind of spirit pill. After carefully examining it, her expression suddenly changed. Little friend, what kind of spirit pill is this? She vaguely felt that this thing would be very useful to her. Seeing her expression, Lu Yi knew that Miao Yan had sensed something. She said, "This is a spirit refining pill, it can temper the divine soul and strengthen the soul." Chapter 1637. Can I have one? Yan Miao asked. Of course. Lu Yi nodded. Although a top-grade soul refining pill was expensive, if they wanted to reach a long-term deal with the mermaid clan, they naturally had to let the other party clearly understand the magical effects of this pill. The best way to do this was to directly take one. Yen Miao stuffed a soul-refining pill into her mouth. Although she had vaguely sensed that this pill would be of great use to her when she smelled its fragrance, Yen Miao was still greatly shocked as she slowly refined the pill. This was because she could clearly feel that as the pill took effect, her soul was nourished by a gentle force. For a moment her eyes turned red. Lu Yi was stunned. Why did she almost cry after eating a soul-refining pill? Even if the effects of a top-grade soul-refining pill were outstanding, it shouldn't cause such a big reaction. I've made a fool of myself in front of little friend. After a long while, Yen Miao finally calmed down. The soul-refining pill's effects were still slowly taking effect in her body. Looking at the situation, it probably wouldn't be a problem to maintain it for a few days. During these few days, her soul would be able to thrive under the miraculous nourishment. Because of her slight loss of self-control, her expression was a little embarrassed. She couldn't help but want to explain, so she asked, "Little friend, do you know why only the queen's bloodline in our clan can be promoted to sunshine?" Lu Yi casually asked, "Is it because of the curse?" It wasn't that he knew beforehand, but this was the only possibility. Yen Miao nodded. "It is indeed because of the curse. That strange curse not only forced us to live in the cold and dark 10,000 Elephant Sea, but also limited the growth of most of our clansmen, making it impossible for our clansmen to ever see the door to sunshine. Only the queen's bloodline is relatively strong, so the restrictions are better than the ordinary clansmen. But even so, the queen's bloodline only has hope of being promoted to sunshine. Not every generation of queen is sunshine. In other words, Bai Shuang may be promoted to sunshine in the future, but she may only be Yu Yao. A few days ago, little friend, you helped me to dissolve the power of the curse. At that time I felt that something had changed. I thought that maybe I could try to pry into the mystery of sunshine, but because this kind of thing has never happened before in my clan, I can't be sure." Lu Yane was enlightened. So that's why the great elder insisted on going out to see personally to verify whether the power of the curse has disappeared, and at the same time, to verify the matter of the promotion of sunshine? Miao Yen nodded and looked at Lu Yi cheerfully. "There's no need to test it now. I'm sure that I can pry into the secrets of sunshine. Because after swallowing the spirit-refining pill, I clearly have some feelings that I have never had before." In terms of accumulation, Yen Miao had long since reached Yu Yao's peak. Unfortunately, she had been restricted by the power of the curse in the past, so she hadn't been able to feel Yu Yao's sunlight at all. But as she consumed the spirit-refining pill, she had a strange feeling. In the past, it was as if she was locked in a sealed house. This house had a secret door. As long as she opened the secret door, she would be able to see through the secret of the sunshine. However, even though she knew that there was a secret door in the house, she still did not know where it was. But now it was different. When the power of the curse was resolved, she vaguely sensed the location of the secret door, and with the consumption of a top-grade soul-refining pill, the secret door even opened a small crack, and a faint bright light shone in from the crack of the door, allowing her to see the hope of going one step further. Otherwise, how could a late-stage Yu Yao like her be so emotional after swallowing a spirit-refining pill? The spirit-refining pill was only the catalyst. The result was the real reason why she could not control herself. If this was the case, then the power of the curse in Yen Miao's body had indeed been completely dispelled. Otherwise, she would not have such a feeling. "Little friend, this spirit-refining pill is very useful to me. I want to buy some," Yen Miao said seriously. She had a feeling that with the help of this pill, she would be able to advance to sunshine even faster. Lu Yi had long known that the spirit-refining pill was very attractive to Yu Yao like Yen Miao. After all, at this realm, if one wanted to advance to sunshine, they would have to work hard on their essence, energy and spirit. The spirit-refining pill was undoubtedly a very suitable spirit-refining pill. Since Yen Miao had such a request, Lu Yi naturally would not refuse. However, since they were doing business, there were some things that needed to be said first. Even blood-related brothers had to settle accounts clearly, let alone two different races. Even if Lu Yi had already decided that the Mare People clan would be Three World Islands' future allies, he could not be careless about this matter. In fact, he had to be more explicit about it. "No problem, but the price of this pill is a little high." Yen Miao smiled. "It doesn't matter if it's expensive. Our Mare People clan does not have many things, but we do have a lot of spirit jades." These words were very capricious. However, she did have the capital to be capricious. Lu Yi immediately informed her of the price of the body refining pill and spirit refining pill. He did not ask for too much, just the price that Chao Xiang of the Myriad Elephant Chamber of Commerce had previously quoted. This price was undoubtedly very fair. More importantly, even if one took out the same amount of spirit jades on the Myriad Elephant Sea, they might not necessarily be able to buy these top-grade spirit pills. Thus, Lu Yi did not ask for too much, but in reality the Mare People clan had gained a bargain. This way the top-grade spirit pills refined by Shui Yuan and Hua Ci would not have to worry about a lack of demand. Lu Yi could not sell these top-grade spirit pills to outsiders, but selling them to the Mare People clan would not be a problem. The cooperation between the two sides could be considered a win-win situation. Furthermore, Shui Yuan and Hua Ci would not have to waste their time refining top-grade spirit pills in the future. They would refine top-grade spirit pills to avoid wasting materials. The Mare People clan would be able to supply as many as they wanted. In the short term, the cultivators of the Three-World Island would not have to worry about the demand for spirit jades. After handing over all the spirit pills he had brought to Yen Miao, the two of them continued on their journey. The Myriad Elephant Sea was not peaceful. Occasionally there would be terrifying spirit beasts roaming about. Even though Yen Miao's cultivation was extraordinary, she was unwilling to fight enemies in such an environment. Thus, when they occasionally encountered spirit fish star beasts that harbored ill intentions, Yen Miao would blow a conch shell to scare them away. A long time ago, Lu Yi had witnessed the power of this conch shell in Yen Miao's hands. Its function should be the complete opposite of his bone sun. The bone sun could attract nearby star beasts, but the conch shell could drive them away. It was very mysterious. According to Yen Miao, the power of her conch shell could even drive away ordinary sunlight star beasts. In the past, when a sunlight star beast invaded the Mare People clan's territory, she had used this conch to drive it away. Moreover, there were not many sunlight star beasts in the Myriad Elephant Sea. In addition, the Myriad Elephant Sea was unparalleled. As long as one's luck was not too bad, they would not encounter them. However, sometimes what one feared would come true. Half a month after setting off from the Mare People clan's territory, Lu Yi and Yen Miao were riding on their seahorses. Suddenly, a brilliant aura swept toward them from not far away. Yen Miao and Lu Yi were shocked. They did not need to investigate to know that it was a sunlight star beast. They looked at each other and restrained their auras. Even though they had the conch shell, they still had to conceal their auras. However, what made them depressed was that the sunlight star beast did not change its direction even though they had restrained their auras. Yen Miao hurriedly gestured to Lu Yi. At the same time, she patted the seahorse beneath her. The two seahorses immediately carried the two of them to the side. The two of them had restrained their auras, but the same could not be said for the two seahorse mounts. However, under normal circumstances, a sunlight star beast would not be interested in a nebula-class seahorse. It was just like how Lu Yi was not interested in a deity ocean beast. The difference in strength between them was too great. However, Yen Miao's heart sank. When the two seahorses changed direction, the sunlight star beast did the same. Yen Miao immediately realized that things were not looking good. This was probably a sunlight star beast looking for food. Otherwise, it would not have gone after the two constellation seahorses. At this point, even if she abandoned the seahorses, it would be useless. The moment she revealed Yu Yao's aura, the sunlight star beast would definitely target her. Yen Miao's figure flashed as she mounted her seahorse and blocked Lu Ye's path. She took out her conch shell, stared ahead and blew into it. She was very confident in her conch shell's power. After all, she had used it to chase away a sunlight star beast before. The low sound of her conch shell rang out. As expected, the sunlight star beast was affected. It suddenly stopped in front of them, hesitating to move forward. Yen Miao continued blowing into her conch shell, her gaze fixed in that direction. Roar! An angry roar came from the other side. It was full of irritation. Along with the roar came Rizhao's terrifying aura. It almost condensed into a solid form, causing the seawater to churn. Even though the two seahorses desperately tried to stabilize their bodies, they were still swept away. Yen Miao's expression changed slightly. She realized that this sunlight star beast was different from the one she had chased away before. Back then, the sunlight star beast that had invaded the merfolk's territory immediately fled as soon as she blew her conch shell, as if it had encountered its natural enemy. However, even though this sunlight star beast's roar was violent, it did not retreat immediately. Instead, its aura became even more dangerous. My conch shell won't be useless against this star beast, right? Yen Miao's heart began to beat faster. There was nowhere to hide here. If the conch shell's might was useless, then she and Lu Yi would be in danger. The low sound of the conch shell did not stop for even a moment. The Sunlight Star Beast's roar was also continuous. It seemed to have sensed the danger ahead and hesitated to move forward. For a moment the situation was in a deadlock. Lu Yi rode his seahorse and hid behind Smoky Meow. He tried his best to see what was going on, but the water was blocking his view. He couldn't see what the Solar Star Beast looked like, even though it wasn't that far away. But judging from the current situation and Smoky Meow's expression, things didn't look good. Sure enough, the 10,000 Elephant Sea was full of dangers. It was not a place where one could wander freely. The first time he came here he had thought of swimming out of the 10,000 Elephant Sea. However, he encountered a Sunlight Star Beast halfway and was forced to return to the Constellation Hall. This time he encountered it again. Wasn't there supposed to be a lot of Sunlight Star Beasts in the 10,000 Elephant Sea? Why was he always encountering them? In fact, there were not many Sunlight Star Beasts in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. However, he and Yen Miao had been swimming here for half a month. If they walked at night too often they would eventually encounter ghosts. End of chapter. Chapter 1638. In the depths of the 10,000 Elephant Sea, the sound of the conch continued, mixed with the angry roars of the Sunshine Star Beast. Lu Yi hid behind Yen Miao, frowning. The situation was not good. Yen Miao's conch was indeed powerful. Even the Sunshine Star Beast stopped in its tracks. However, if they could not drive the Sunshine Star Beast away, both he and Yen Miao might die here. He had to think of a way. While he was thinking, Yen Miao's voice suddenly rang in his ears. "Young friend, you go first." Lu Yi frowned. "What about you, Grand Elder?" "Don't worry, I have a way to escape," Yen Miao replied. Of course Lu Yi did not believe her. How could Yu Yao escape when she was up against the Sunshine Star Beast? Yen Miao wanted him to go first because she wanted to stall for time and ensure his safety. Otherwise they would all suffer together. Moreover, Lu Yi could see that although Yen Miao's conch was mysterious, it consumed a lot of her power. This was because when Yen Miao blew the conch, her transcendence energy was frantically pouring into the conch. Judging from the situation, Yen Miao would not be able to hold on for long. As the two of them conversed, a sudden change occurred. An even louder roar came from the front. Then the Sunshine Star Beast, which had been hesitating, rapidly approached them. It seemed to be completely enraged. Yen Miao's expression changed drastically. She hurriedly shouted, "Young friend, run!" As she spoke, her figure flashed and she leaped onto the seahorse. Lu Yi vaguely heard a murmur. The next moment, Yen Miao's already powerful aura skyrocketed. Even her body emitted a dazzling golden light. Although Smoky Meow usually had the appearance of a gentle and beautiful woman, in fact, every mermaid was an expert in close combat with the enemy. They were natural body cultivators. Because there were no suitable weapons under the sea, the weapons they trusted the most were their fists. Of course, there were also mermaids who would grind the bones of some star beasts into sharp weapons, but such sharp weapons were completely unrelated to real treasures. The Queen's scepter was the only true magic weapon in the entire mermaid clan. It was the symbol of the mermaid clan's supreme power, and it was also a powerful magic weapon. Yen Miao's aura was so powerful that Lu Yi couldn't even look at her directly. Compared to the late-stage Moon Yao from Kong Cheng's star systems, Yen Miao was far stronger. Even Luan Xiao couldn't compare to her. Even so, when compared to the aura of the sun, it was still like the light of a firefly compared to the bright moon. Miao Yen had just started to move when the other side had already arrived in front of him. Lu Yi finally saw what the astral beast looked like. It was a huge fish with a huge head and a flat body. Its body wasn't even as long as its head. At this moment, it opened its bloody mouth, revealing its fangs. Its eyes were scarlet. In the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of Miao Yen and bit him. Yen Miao's movements were very fast. She wanted to dodge, but at that moment, an invisible force bound her. It was obvious that the Solar Star Beast had secretly done something. She hurriedly broke free from the bindings, but it was too late for her to dodge. Half of her body was in the strange fish's mouth. Her skin could clearly feel the sharpness and toughness of the other side's fangs. Miao Yan's face paled. She felt that the heavens were unfair. It hadn't been easy for her to see the light of hope, but now she was going to die here. Before she could finish her thoughts, a dazzling golden light suddenly shot from the side and hit the strange fish's body. Miao Yen, who was already waiting for death, was pleasantly surprised to find that the strange fish's fangs didn't show any signs of closing. It was as if it was frozen. She instinctively dodged to the side and looked over. She was shocked. That was because the strange fish's body was glowing with a golden light. It was completely motionless, as if it was really frozen in time. A Sunshine Realm strange fish like this couldn't have become like this for no reason. Miao Yin suddenly remembered that before the strange fish changed, a golden light had shot from the side. That was in the direction of Lu Yi. Could it be Li Taibai's doing? With that thought in mind, she hurriedly turned her head and saw Lu Yi riding a shivering seahorse. He was holding a simple coin in his hand with an excited expression. Lu Yi was indeed very excited. Although he had made the treasure coin swallow a large amount of seawater and turn it into money, he speculated that this thing might be able to affect the Sunshine Realm. However, he didn't have a target to test it on, so he couldn't make an accurate judgment. This was also the reason why he didn't take out the money just now. If it didn't work, it would anger the other side. But since the strange fish attacked first, Lu Yi couldn't care less. He could only take out the treasure coin. If it worked, that would be the best. If it didn't, then he would have to escape immediately. As for whether he could escape or not, that would depend on the will of the heavens. Fortunately, the treasure money was useful. After being hit by the treasure coin's golden light, the strange fish was immediately covered in a layer of gold and froze in place. After the treasure coin in his hand released the golden light, it returned to its previous dull and simple appearance. However, it quickly began to swallow seawater and turned silver in the blink of an eye. When Lu Yi raised his head again, he found that the strange fish's power was surging wildly. As its power surged, the golden light covering its body was rapidly dimming. Lu Yi was shocked. He realized that the treasure coin's power was disappearing. It seemed that the treasure coin was useful to the Sunshine Realm, but it couldn't be maintained for a long time. Great Elder, quickly do it. Lu Yi hurriedly shouted, reminding Miao Yen, who was still in a daze. Miao Yen was shocked. It was already incredible that her conch could drive away the Sunshine Realm star beast. She didn't expect Lu Yi to have an even more powerful item. With just one attack, it could freeze a Sunshine Realm star beast. Hearing Lu Yi's shout, Miao Yen finally came back to his senses. When he saw the strange fish's situation, he knew that it would be too late if he didn't act now. He hurriedly appeared on top of the strange fish's head and began to chant again. At the same time, his aura skyrocketed. At the same time, a golden light appeared on his fist and he smashed it down. With a loud bang, the strange fish was smashed and rolled in the sea. Yen Miao was like a shadow. His fists and feet turned into violent sharp weapons. His whole person left behind afterimages as he bombarded the strange fish indiscriminately. With Yu Yao's cultivation at the peak of the late Yu Yao stage, such violent attacks could even shatter a star. However, the strange fish was obviously not affected. Although it was tumbling in the sea like a sandbag, its physique was unimaginably strong. Even with Miao Yan's fierce attacks, it only left a few subtle wounds on the surface of its body. In less than a dozen breaths of time, the golden light on the strange fish's body had dimmed to the extreme. Even though the strange fish was being beaten, its eyes were still glowing fiercely. It glared at Miao Yan, who was dancing around it, as if saying that it would teach her a lesson soon. Yen Miao despaired. Her current situation was similar to Lu Ye's battle against the late-stage Yu Yao of the Blood Tribe. Even though she had the absolute advantage, she lacked the means to pose a fatal threat to the enemy. This was very awkward. Seeing that the golden light on the strange fish's body was about to disappear, Miao Yen steeled her heart and was about to use a forbidden technique. This forbidden technique would burn all of her vitality. She was confident that no matter how strong the other party's physique was, it would still cause great damage. However, once this forbidden technique was used, she would either die on the spot. Even if she managed to survive, she could forget about advancing to the Sunshine Realm in the future. Lu Ye's shout reached her ears, "Great Elder, get out of the way." Miao Yen instinctively dodged to the side. Almost at the same time, a familiar golden light shot out from Lu Ye's side and struck the frozen strange fish. In an instant, the golden light spread out. The golden light on the strange fish's body, which was about to disappear, shone brightly once again. The strange fish undoubtedly had a certain level of intelligence. Its blood-red eyes, which were originally looking at Miao Yen as if she was a dead person, widened and became extremely stunned. It couldn't understand what was going on. It clearly felt that it was about to break free from the shackles, so why did the shackles suddenly deepen? Not far away, Lu Yi lowered his head and stared at the treasure coin in his hand. He almost couldn't help but laugh at the sky. I'm rich. With this treasure coin in hand, wouldn't the mere Wanxiang Sea be like my own backyard? I could come and go as I please. It could be said that in a special environment like the Wanxiang Sea with this treasure coin, one would be invincible. The strange fish indeed had the ability to break free from the treasure coin's golden light, but so what? Under the cover of the sea water, the treasure coin's power recovered very quickly. Before it could completely break free, the treasure coin could unleash its power again. Miao Yin was obviously aware of this. She originally planned to use the forbidden technique, but now it seemed that there was no need for it. This was really a chance at life in a hopeless situation. She immediately leapt towards the strange fish with joy. This time, the strange fish didn't dare to look at her with any contempt. Although Miao Yin hadn't caused much damage to it, she had indeed injured it a little. If it couldn't break free from the shackles, it would really be beaten to death. No matter how strong its physique was, it wasn't to the extent that a late-stage Yu Yao couldn't hurt it. It just needed some time. First Elder, use this. Lu Yi shouted as he tossed his mountain blade over to the Elder. He could also see that Miao Yin was in an awkward position, so he naturally didn't mind lending her a little help. The mountain blade didn't have any special features other than its sharpness. In the hands of a late-stage Yu Yao like Miao Yin, its power would definitely be greater than in his hands. Moreover, it had a strange power that could prevent the enemy's wounds from healing. It was perfect for the weak to fight against the strong. Lu Yi could kill a cultivator like Bai Jin, so there was no reason that Miao Yin couldn't kill this strange fish. Miao Yin took the mountain blade and held it with both hands. She poured her magic power into it and slashed down fiercely. She didn't know the difference between a spiritual artifact and a magic artifact. Otherwise she wouldn't have dared to do this. If a spiritual artifact was infused with magic power, it was very likely that it would suffer irreparable damage. In addition, she was a late-stage Yu Yao. If this blade had been the mountain blade of the past, it might have even been broken. Fortunately, the mountain blade was no longer the mountain blade of the past. It was transformed from the soldier tribe's puppet, so it was far more powerful than a spiritual artifact. End of chapter. Chapter 1639. A huge gash immediately appeared on the strange fish's head. Blood flowed out, and under the stimulation of pain, the strange fish's body seemed to twitch slightly. However, because of the magic of the treasure coin, it could only twitch and could not make any movements to dodge or resist. Seeing this, Yin Miao's power erupted even more fiercely. She held the Panshan saber tightly with both hands and slashed it down like a storm. Of course, she didn't know anything about saber techniques. However, with her powerful cultivation and the sharp weapon in her hand, which was transformed from the ancient soldier race, her opponent was in a situation where he couldn't dodge. Even if she didn't know anything about saber techniques, she could still cause great damage. Blood splattered, and in just a moment, the wound on the strange fish's huge head was so deep that the bone could be seen. However, this fellow's bones were undoubtedly very hard. Yin Miao slashed a few more times, but only left shallow scars on its skull. Lu Yi activated the treasure coin's power again and shot a golden light over. At the same time, he discovered something. Although the power of the treasure coin had an irresistible binding effect on the strange fish, as the number of times the treasure coin's power was activated increased, the time it could bind the strange fish seemed to be shortened. Not to mention other things, the speed at which the golden light enveloping the strange fish's body dissipated was obviously faster than the first time. Lu Yi was not sure at first, but when he used the golden light to envelop the strange fish for the third time and carefully observed the situation of the golden light fading, he immediately confirmed this matter. From the looks of it, if the treasure coin was used on the same enemy, the effect would become worse and worse. Right now, he could use the surrounding seawater to quickly activate the treasure coin's power and restrain the strange fish before it broke free. However, if he used it too many times, there would inevitably be a situation where the strange fish broke free and the treasure coin's power did not accumulate enough. Once this situation occurred, Yin Miao, who was right in front of him, would be in danger. Therefore, he had to end the battle quickly. Yin Miao obviously also noticed this point, and also noticed the strange fish's hard skull. She immediately abandoned her original target and attacked other parts of the strange fish, probably trying to find the strange fish's weakness. Such a big sunshine star beast, its entire body could not be as hard as its skull. A moment later, the strange fish was covered in cuts and bruises. Smoke Miao also found the weakest part of the strange fish's body, which was the fish's belly. At this moment, the fish's abdomen had been cut open, and its internal organs were flowing out. The strange fish howled in pain, and the murderous glint in its eyes became even more intense. However, under the restriction of the golden light, it could only quietly feel the flow of its own vitality, and was completely powerless to resist. After Lu Yi activated the power of the money for the fourth time, Yin Miao slashed down a few more times before he finally stopped, his aura fluctuating. The strange fish in front of her was still wrapped in the golden light, but there was no sign of life. She stared at the strange fish that had been chopped to the point where she couldn't even make out its original appearance. She couldn't believe that she had actually killed Rizhao. Although it was a star beast without high intelligence, it was still Rizhao. When they recalled everything that happened earlier, it was truly extremely dangerous. If it wasn't for Li Taibai possessing that strange and profound treasure coin, the two of them would have really fallen here. Lu Yi rode over on her seahorse, which was still trembling, and looked at the strange fish's corpse with great interest. The corpse of a star beast had a certain value, especially the star beasts in the Wanxiang Sea. This was because the star beasts in the Wanxiang Sea were basically spirit fish, and they lived in such a special environment all year round. Their flesh and blood were extremely valuable as food and medicine. Just by looking at the price of a white spirit fish, any white spirit fish could be sold for a few thousand spirit jades, and white spirits were considered the lowest level of spirit fish star beasts in the Wanxiang Sea. The value of such a sunshine spirit fish's corpse was naturally not something a white spirit fish could compare to. Lu Yi estimated that even if this strange fish was chopped beyond recognition by Yen Miao, it could be sold for at least a few million spirit jades. Moreover, there was a sunshine-level crystal core in its body, which was more valuable than flesh and blood. It could easily be sold for tens of millions of spirit jades. Of course, she couldn't let go of such a good thing. The crystal core was easy to deal with as long as she took it out. However, this strange fish's corpse was too big to fit in her storage ring. She could only separate it. Lu Yi asked Yen Miao, who was still in a daze, "Great Elder, please remove the fish's flesh and blood." Yen Miao naturally wouldn't refuse. Although she had used a lot of energy in the battle just now, she wasn't completely exhausted. It could even be said that the energy she used to kill the fish with the mountain pan saber was not as great as the energy she used to use the conch that could repel Star Beast. Yen Miao understood Lu Ye's intention and immediately cut the strange fish's flesh into pieces. Lu Yi happily put them away. When the strange fish was alive, its body was strong, and Yen Miao had to use a lot of energy to cut it. However, after it died, its body wasn't as strong. Although it wasn't to the extent that she could cut it open easily, it was already a piece of cake for Yen Miao. After working for a full 2 hours, only a skeleton was left of the strange fish. The skeleton was also a good thing, especially the skull of the strange fish. It was extremely hard. Even Miao Yen was unable to cause any substantial damage to the skull. If it was refined into a treasure like a shield, it would certainly be impregnable. Without the flesh and blood, it was more convenient to disassemble the bones. However, Lu Yi only took the hardest part of the skull and left the bone spurs and other things to Yen Miao. She could bring these things back to her clansmen and then refine them into weapons to kill enemies. Although the strange fish was dead, its bones still contained a trace of divine power. If the mermaid clan used the bone spurs to refine weapons, the star beasts in the 10,000 Elephant Sea might not dare to provoke them. It could be said that just the bone spurs on the strange fish's body could increase the mermaid clan's ability to survive in the 10,000 Elephant Sea by a large margin. Yen Miao thanked her. Lu Yi said, "Great Elder is too polite. You killed the fish, so you deserve it." Yen Miao smiled and shook her head. She did kill the fish, but if it weren't for the power of Lu Ye's treasure coin, not to mention killing the fish, she would have been buried in the fish's stomach. Yen Miao was undoubtedly very curious about the treasure coin that could restrain the Sunshine Star Beast, but she didn't ask much. Lu Yi was the key to helping the mermaid clan get rid of the curse. Naturally, she was happy to see that Lu Yi had such a treasure to protect himself. Yen Miao rested for a while, then the two set off again. On the way, Lu Yi didn't have to be careful anymore. Instead, he rode on the seahorse and looked left and right, wishing he could find another Sunshine Star Beast to kill. Such a good opportunity was rare. Under normal circumstances, if he wanted to kill a Sunshine Star Beast, he didn't know how long it would take before he had the ability to do so. However, in this place the treasure coin's power was limitless, and Yen Miao, a late-stage Yu Yao, was there. If any Sunshine Star Beast dared to jump out, Lu Yi would shine a golden light on it and hand the mountain pan saber to Yen Miao. The difference between killing it with a single slash or a single slash was the difference. Moreover, he also discovered that the treasure coin's golden light was incomparably fast. If he wasn't vigilant in advance, he wouldn't be able to dodge it. That strange fish had lived under the sea for countless years, so its speed was undoubtedly very fast. It wasn't any slower than a normal Sunshine Star beast, but under Lu Ye's sneak attack, it was still hit. The only way to avoid the treasure coin's power was to be vigilant in advance and dodge or block the moment Lu Ye attacked. Otherwise, if Lu Ye attacked, the enemy would have no chance. As early as when he participated in the struggle for the Constellation Hall, Lu Ye knew that a life-and-death battle between cultivators didn't only depend on the strength of one's own foundation, but also external forces. In particular, some people had strange treasures in their hands. That was what he had to guard against the most, because no one knew what kind of power those strange treasures had. He never thought that he would also have one now, and it was a treasure that could threaten the Sunshine Star. Although the treasure coin could only display its limitless power under the 10,000 Elephant Sea, it had a storage effect and could be used once outside. This was his life-saving trump card in the face of a strong enemy. Along the way they encountered a few Lunar Star beasts, but they didn't have any conflicts. However, the Sunshine Star beast that Lu Ye had been longing for didn't appear again. It seemed that there weren't many Sunshine Star beasts under the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Until a certain moment, Lu Ye suddenly realized that the situation above his head wasn't quite right. The seawater didn't seem as dark as before. He had gone deep into the 10,000 Elephant Sea several times, so he was naturally very clear about this change. He immediately understood that he was about to swim out. Calculating the time, it had been almost a month since he and Yen Miao set off from the mermaid territory. Judging from this, he had chosen the right direction, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to swim out so quickly. If he had chosen the wrong direction, he might not have been able to reach the sea even after swimming for several months. He quickly stopped Yen Miao and communicated with her through his divine sense. Yen Miao immediately became excited. She had been waiting for this moment, but when it finally arrived, even with her temperament, she couldn't face it calmly. Had the power of the curse in her body really disappeared? Could she really leave the 10,000 Elephant Sea? These were all unknowns, so she had to take a gamble. If she succeeded, it would be a good thing. This meant that Lu Ye was indeed the person who could help their clan get rid of the curse, just as the ancestors' teachings said. However, if she failed, she would definitely die. Great Elder, don't show yourself first. I'll find a suitable place, Lu Ye reminded her. It wouldn't be good to let others see them coming out from under the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Otherwise it would be too shocking. Moreover, Lu Ye couldn't be sure that Yen Miao wouldn't be in danger if she went out to sea like this, so he had to find a safe place to avoid being discovered. If anything happened, Yen Miao could immediately enter the sea. Yen Miao nodded. I'll wait for your news. Lu Ye nodded and continued to swim upstream. This place was indeed close to the sea surface. The higher they went, the brighter the light. After a while, he quietly poked his head out from under the sea and looked around. After confirming that there was no one around, he quickly flashed out and activated the power of the talent tree to condense his doppelganger. Then he hurriedly dressed his doppelganger. Immediately after, he entered the sea again and returned to Yen Miao's side. His doppelganger stayed in the sea. End of this chapter. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.